Welcome to the Fantasy Audiobook. I have finished the decisive battle in the Valley of Gods, the system is activated. Chapter 1. Valley of the Gods. At this time, Alan's upper body was bare, revealing his bronze skin and well-proportioned muscles. It was as if the air around his body was shocked by this powerful momentum, creating an unreal feeling. Hey, Alan, do you have to make such a big fuss? Roger's mustache was up and down, full of joy, but at this time there was no smile on his face, and it was all solemn. Behind him, Pluton, Rayleigh and Copper Jabba were also in full stance, their muscles tense. On the right side of Roger and the others, there are two sturdy men standing. One is extremely muscular and has a scar on his left eye. The other is wearing a pair of frog glasses and has a long beard on his chin tied into a twist. Both of them were wearing Marines' cloaks, with the word, Justice, printed on their backs. Alan, I really don't want to fight you in this fight. Why do you have to make trouble for those scum? Garp picked his nose, looking nonchalant. Before he could continue speaking, Warring States beside him quickly covered his mouth. The dignified Vice Admiral Marine insulted the Celestial Dragons in front of the pirates. Even if Fleet Admiral Kong continued to help Garp, he would still be punished. Boy Alan, this is what Lousy wants to do. Are you too arrogant, little brat? In the other direction of Alan, a man with afro hair was staring at everyone in front of him with an unhappy expression. Behind him, Edward Newgate with a crescent beard, Charlotte Linlin, who is 8 meters tall and beautiful, and Shaki, who has blonde hair, are all ready to go. At this time, these powerful men in the world were actually standing on the same front, facing the young man of about 20 years old who was surrounded in the middle. Hey, how could I be so virtuous and capable that I let the top warriors from Marine and Pirates join forces to deal with me? Alan glanced around in a frivolous tone and raised his eyebrows carelessly. In the front are Rox, Whitebeard, Golden Lion and Charlotte Linlin, on the side are Roger, Rayleigh and Jabba, and in the back are Garp and Sengoku who are waiting in full force. Alan, it's not that Marine and Pirates teamed up to deal with you, it's that what you did was too terrifying. Warring States stared at the seemingly harmless young man in front of him with a cold face. If it weren't for Marine's internal information about him, he would be as tall as a man. Who would have believed that the person who stirred up the world was actually a young man under the age of 20? Scary. Alan sneered and spat aside. Pirates massacre civilians, shouldn't they be killed to death? Marine has evil intentions, shouldn't he be punished? The Tianlong people are harming the world, shouldn't they be exterminated? Alan's first 2 sentences didn't get much response, but after he said the third sentence loudly, even the people watching from a distance were in an uproar. In fact, Alan does not have such a great dream, to bring peace to the common people in the entire pirate world. There was no way around it. The town that was originally very peaceful when we first crossed over was completely slaughtered by a group of pirates. Only Alan escaped. After wandering at sea for half a year, he was encountered by a slave capture ship and was caught directly on the ship. By luck, I accidentally ate a devil fruit and escaped, but I was discovered by Marine and a reward was placed for no reason. Before this, Alan had never taken the initiative to attack anyone. It can be said that the reason why he has reached this point is entirely the result of Marine and Pirates coercing him. Since you can't keep a low profile, then you should simply be the most high-profile person. As a time traveler, how can you still lose your temper? After killing several big pirates and squeezing a dozen celestial dragons to death, Alan's evil reputation spread throughout the world. With everyone in the world as his enemy, he could only disband his team and come to the Valley of Gods alone. He originally planned to cause a big incident, but he didn't expect that the incident would be too big and he would be surrounded by so many strong men. It is true that I was a little too arrogant before. I felt that my strength had reached the top of the pyramid of the pirate world, so I felt confident. Otherwise, if I had scanned it with the color of knowledge in advance, I wouldn't have become like this passively. I'm afraid this time, even if I try my best, I'll have a narrow escape. Although this group of people are still young now, if we push back a few decades, the 3 legendary pirates are all present. Marine Fleet Admiral, Marine heroes, and even 4 emperors also came, but one of them is still the interns can only watch from a distance. This is truly a high-end game. Originally, this Valley of the Gods wasn't about Roger and Garp beating up Rox. Why did it turn into beating up on me now? You Marines and pirates are fighting together. Aren't you afraid that a fight will break out and rocks will sneak up on you? That guy is not a good guy. Alan raised his eyebrows at Sengoku. That guy Garp also has muscles in his head. Naturally, he would find the more suspicious Sengoku to provoke this kind of thing. This method of sowing discord is crude as hell, but the simpler methods are often the most effective. After hearing Alan's words, a trace of hesitation appeared on Zhang Guo's face. You know, the current lineup to deal with Alan is certainly strong, but after Alan is taken care of, the two of them will have to face such a large group of pirates. If it is true what Alan said, they and Marine should not get involved now. Isn't it good to let dog bite dog between pirates? Eren, as long as our Roger pirates are here, your only opponent today is you. Roger stood a step forward, unsheathed the ace in his hand, and pointed the tip of the sword directly at Alan. His good friend, Garp, naturally followed him immediately, but he sighed softly. For the sake of peace in the world, Alan, you should restrain your hands today. When you enter the great prison under the sea, I will try my best to save your life. For Garp, Alan, who has never harmed civilians, is one of the few people who can catch his eye. The peace of the world. Is it the peace of your extravagant and lustful celestial dragons, or the peace of the pirates who plunder wantonly? You have never considered the life and death of civilians. How could Alan, who had traveled from the Dragon Kingdom in the later world, agree with their remarks about treating ordinary people like dumb dogs? Maybe only Garp's son will understand what he said after he has experienced something. Ellen, your thoughts are still too dangerous. Let's just let it go. Why continue to struggle in vain? Warring States certainly has the confidence to say such a thing. If everyone present here can get together, it may sound exaggerated to overturn the world, but it is not impossible. We are just dealing with Alan alone, what else is there to be suspicious of? Why are you talking so much nonsense? Just start the fight and end it. Boy Alan, I ask you one last time, do you want to join Laozi's pirate group? Let's join hands to overthrow the world. At this time, a large amount of black mist emerged from Rox, who was standing opposite Alan, forming a flame-like shape, constantly fluctuating with his momentum. Whitebeard, Golden Lion and Charlotte Linlin beside him frowned and took a few steps away. What about the secret fruit? It seems like we really have to fight hard today. Alan frowned slightly, moved his neck, and made a crisp sound like exploding beans, with a hint of murderous intent in his eyes. In this case, unless he just put down his personal feelings and joined the Rox or Marine camp, but after living in the pirate world for so many years and witnessing countless scenes of family destruction and death, how could he put aside his grudges and work as someone else's subordinate? Not answering is already the best answer. Garp and Sengoku also took off their marine cloaks, moved their muscles a few times, and their momentum burst out at the same time. Under the impact of these entangled momentums, all the clouds in the originally gloomy sky instantly shattered into countless pieces. Sunlight shone in, and the wind that was still raging in the valley slowly calmed down. Although the environment has changed, the increasingly depressing feeling spread from the Valley of Gods to the surroundings. Except for the strong men around Alan, everyone else had to step back a few meters again. Garp slowly raised his arm and aimed his clenched fist at Alan. Just when he was about to fly forward, Alan suddenly stretched out a hand. Etc. Why? Garp, who was ready to take action, was staggered by such an action, and the momentum he had prepared was stagnated. What happened? Alan did not answer Garp's question. At this time, a metallic prompt sounded in his mind. Congratulations to host for successfully traveling to the world of One Piece. The system of competition among the strongest is officially launched. Gift packages for newbies are being distributed. Congratulations to the host for receiving the reward, Physical Fitness +1, Primary Swordsmanship. The series of tasks is being released. Road to the Strong One. Face the Straw Hat Boy who will become One Piece in the future, take action bravely. Mission details. Please defeat the 17-year-old future One Piece monkey D. Luffy. Ignoring Garp's and others' puzzled looks, Alan looked at the contents of his system in a dull manner, and then opened the novice gift package. A stream of heat then entered his body, strengthening it in all directions. As for the degree of strengthening, how do you say it? It's probably equivalent to the improvement he made from the 10 push-ups he did during practice last night. And elementary swordsmanship. Is it possible that the opposite Roger and Shiki are both great swordsmen? Facing the group of people around him, Alan decided to use his best fists. I said, System, do you want to see who is in front of me before issuing a task? Even if you defeat Luffy, then Garp's hair will be black. Let alone Luffy, Dragon may still be relying on the fifth girl for a living. Road to the Strong One. Face the Straw Hat Boy who will become One Piece in the future, take action bravely. Mission details. Please defeat the 17-year-old future One Piece Monkey D. Luffy. Warm reminder. The main task cannot be refused. Please host complete the task seriously. There will be corresponding rewards for each completed task. Are you kidding me? System, do you know what time it is now? Year 1520 of the Haiyuan calendar. I'm QNMD. It's the year 1484 of the Haiyuan calendar. It's still 36 years away from the time you said. Alan was speechless. Isn't this system really just for fun? The time is subject to the system. Go, go, go. Alan spat to the side with a dark look on his face. What are you doing there pretending to be so weird? A black shadow appeared in front of Alan, and a fist with a sound of breaking through the air had already hit his face. Rocks is not as rough as Garp. Alan really won't take action if he reaches out to stop him. Killing you while you are sick is the purpose of pirate fighting. Alan did not hesitate and directly greeted him with a fist. Boom. As the two of them fought, there were bursts of sonic booms, and countless dust was lifted up from the ground and floated around. The fist in contact with rocks kept feeling slightly weak, making Alan's body feel slightly weak, like a sea stone. Ha ha ha. Subversive, Alan is indeed a capable person. Laozi's dark fruit is your nemesis. Before Rocks could finish laughing, a huge force had already sent him flying back, and even traces of blood appeared on his face. At this time, Alan had a trace of disdain on his face. It's just a dark fruit, it's not like we haven't seen how Whitebeard of War beat Teach. If I hadn't seen you take action on your ship and knew your weakness, how could Whitebeard, who was dying, directly suppress Teach, who had no fruit ability and could leave scars on the red-haired face? Laozi will tell you, when Laozi usually exercises, he is always wearing sea tower stones. Coupled with the blessings of the turtle fruit, phantom beast species, and Xuanwu form, his physique is now even stronger than that of Kaido, who later claimed to be the strongest creature in the sea, land, and air. In terms of physical blessing alone, Qinglong is not worthy of being compared with Xuanwu. Fist bone impact. As Garp's figure jumped into the air, countless domineering energy wrapped around his fists, and Moonwalk even generated invisible shock waves while stepping in midair. Before the ear-piercing sound of the sonic boom arrived, he had already appeared in the sky above Alan. His waist and abdomen drove his arms to exert force, and his jet-black, domineering fist struck hard at Alan's body. Buddha's impact. The moment Garp took action, Sengoku's body became huge, and a shining golden Buddha tens of meters high appeared on the battlefield. The Buddha's palm pushed a shock wave towards Alan, stirring up a large amount of smoke and dust. Bring it on. Alan's black hair was dancing wildly due to the strong wind stirred up by their attacks, but his face was still very calm. As he finished speaking, a slender palm appeared in front of Garp and silently caught his iron fist. Although Alan's well-proportioned figure and Garp's disproportionate muscles don't seem to be on the same level, when the two intersect, Garp's boxing skills are so silently annihilated. Garp raised his head in disbelief and looked at the expressionless Alan in front of him. His pupils shrank slightly and there was a look of disbelief in his eyes. Although it was just a tentative attack, he didn't know how many times he had experienced large and small battles, and this was the first time that someone took his fist so easily. Before he could react, a big foot appeared in front of him. Garp only had time to block it with his other hand before he was kicked back with huge force. Under the top-notch armament, he could actually feel the slight sting coming from his bones. Boom. The next second, Sengoku's shock wave hit Alan head-on. Amidst the smoke and dust, a dull voice came from inside. Warring states, are you afraid that I'm too hot, so why don't you come and fan me? You. God avoids. Before Sengoku could speak, a voice came from his side, and a slash wrapped in black and red conquerors instantly flew out from Ace and went straight to Alan. On Roger's right, Rayleigh also took action. The silver-white slash was slightly smaller than the divine avoidance, but its momentum was also extremely amazing. Jabba held an axe in one hand, jumped up from their side, and flew into the smoke along with the slash. After a harsh sound like fingernails scratching the glass, the still diffusing smoke and dust cleared instantly, and it was seen that Alan's upper body had turned pitch black without knowing when, and the top-notch armed color directly covered the half of the body. At this time, the blade of Jabba's axe in his right hand was being held in Alan's hand, and the axe in his left hand, wrapped in an armored color, was slashing at his chest, but it could not make any progress. Jabba, get out. Suddenly, Roger's expression changed and he spoke suddenly to remind. But his words were obviously too late, and there was a trace of anger on Alan's face. After all, no one wants to be beaten by a group of people. Now that you have taken action, you must bear the consequences of your action. Alan's free right hand was seen clenching his fist, and black and red conquerors appeared on it instantly, hitting Jabba's chest with a movement that was difficult to see with the naked eye. The huge force even caused a sonic boom sound to appear on Jabba's body after being blown away, and his entire body was blasted out of the Valley of Gods. A distant figure appeared behind him and held him firmly in his arms. Bullet, send Jabba to Crocus. There was a trace of anger in Rayleigh's eyes, and he could naturally see it with his eyesight. Jabba, who was caught by Bullet, had already turned white and lost consciousness. You come here to besiege Lousy, so be prepared to be sent away by Lousy. Alan's face also showed a ferocious expression. If a tiger doesn't respond to a cat, do you think I'm critically ill? Ellen, you, Rayleigh. Before Rayleigh could finish speaking, Roger beside him had already put his hand on his shoulder. Now that we have decided to come here, we must have the awareness that we will die. The serious Roger's face no longer had a playful expression, but Rayleigh could already feel the suppressed emotions in his captain's heart. How could Roger not be angry when Jabba, whom he had been with day and night, was injured like that? Shaki, be careful, you need a strong body to fight a guy like this. Rox glanced sideways behind him. Among the cadres of his pirate group, the ambitious Shaki is the most promising to him. Others like Newgate who wants a family and Linlin who wants to have a baby are not taken into consideration by him, let alone others. The strength of the trainee cadres and crew members is even worse. Got it, Captain, Shaki responded solemnly, and his hands holding the sword hilt tightened involuntarily. Although he has never fought against Uren, he has fought against the Roger pirates. Roger and Rayleigh's combined slashes didn't hurt that guy, so that's a bit exaggerated. Air shock. With a roar, the 6-meter-tall Whitebeard jumped out, and the fruit power compressed to the extreme attached to Kong Yunchi, slashing straight down towards Alan. Compared to the shocking fruit that shook mountains and rocks in later generations, Whitebeard's use of the fruit's power at this time was obviously better. Although the landform was not changed, the air that the clouds passed through was cracked by the fruit shaking ability above. This is interesting. I didn't expect that even Newgate would have to take a trip into this muddy water. Alan still admired Whitebeard somewhat in his heart, but he still punched him with a domineering punch. It doesn't matter what fancy sword skills or abilities you have, I just punch like this and defeat all the magic with one force. The two intersected, and the power of the shaking fruit that escaped caused the ground to instantly crack into countless clods of soil. Whitebeard grinned while pressing his Kong Yunchi down hard. The captain's order. Besides, I also want to fight you, the legendary strongest man in the world. Then you have to keep an eye on it. The corners of Alan's mouth turned up, and he used his right fist again, directly dispelling Kong Yun's ability to cut the shock fruit on it, and then swung out his left fist. The man with the white beard only had time to block Kong Yunchi's knife shaft in front of him in midair. As soon as the two came into contact, the knife shaft was obviously twisted, and then flew back instantly with the white beard. The 6-meter-tall Whitebeard's feet carved 2 deep ravines on the ground before he came to a halt dozens of meters away. This is too strong. Outside the Valley of the Gods, Bullet, who was only 13 years old at this time, stared blankly at the roaring Valley of the Gods in the distance, reluctant to blink. In the Endless War country a few years ago, after Alan's persuasion failed and then he took action to destroy it, he drifted alone on the sea. After getting the fusion fruit by chance and being defeated by Roger, he joined the Roger Pirates. He originally thought that Roger was one of the best masters in the world, but he didn't expect that after seeing Alan's battle today, he realized what it means to be someone who is different from others. Looking at Uncle Jabba, who usually taught him, but now lying on the ground unconscious, Bullet couldn't help but feel emotional. He challenged Roger, and even if he failed, he would only suffer some injuries. If he had challenged Alan at that time, he might have lost his life with one punch. After checking Jabba's body, Kuroka smiled and patted Bullet's shoulder. Of course that guy is strong, otherwise why would there be so many people in siege, and even Marine and pirates are joining forces. As he spoke, he shook his head to himself, not caring about the expressions of the Marines standing not far away. Mama, such a strong man, I really want to capture him and have a child with me. Charlotte Linlin, who had pink curly hair and was wearing lipstick and eyeshadow, looked at Alan not far away and her eyes changed. She was obviously 8 meters tall, but she fell in love with Alan, who was only 1.8 meters tall. It was a bit weird to say it. Shut up, you are disgusting if you don't fight. This huge sound was naturally heard by Alan. Charlotte Linlin, who is now only in her 30s, still looks extremely gorgeous, and she is completely different from the old and fat big mom in later generations. But even if he hasn't seen what she will become in the future, Alan has no interest in her. Outside the valley, he saw several children of the Charlotte family. Even their 4th son, Owen, was born. Maybe she has had several men. He can't afford this kind of woman. Charlotte Linlin, who was still smiling, her voice faltered, and her face instantly turned angry. If you don't follow me, then go to hell. Napoleon, Prometheus, Zeus. Mother. The flame Prometheus instantly came to the end of Charlotte Linlin's weapon Napoleon, and the thunder Zeus flew to its front end, forming an energy ring with Napoleon's body. Light cannon. A high-density laser shot straight into Alan's chest at an extremely fast speed, which made him a little more solemn. He crossed his hands and directly faced Charlotte Linlin's attack. The laser's high temperature and lightning's paralyzing properties made Alan frown the moment he came into contact with it. But after resisting for a few seconds, Alan suddenly turned aside and let the laser pass. The laser that he changed its direction even opened a huge cave on the rock wall of the Valley of Gods behind him. The high temperature generated by the interweaving of flames and thunder and lightning made the ground tend to crystallize. In terms of attacks alone, Charlotte Linlin's full blow was even stronger than Roger's divine dodge just now. But it just made him feel hot and numb. If he really wanted to cause any harm to Alan's body, it would be a bit uninteresting. Alan shook his arm casually and looked around at the people still surrounding him with disdain. I've tried enough. If it's to this extent, there's no need for you to surround me. Just stay here. At this point in the battle, except for Charlotte Linlin, who attacked with all her strength just now because of her anger, the rest of the people were just making tentative attacks. Although Alan has never fought with them to the death, this can still be easily seen. Newgate, Linlin, Shaki, you go ahead. There's no point in fighting this guy too many times. Rock's expression was a little gloomy. No one knew what he was thinking. Even Sengoku instinctively felt that this guy must have some conspiracy brewing, but he couldn't guess it. La. Okay, this is probably the only time in my life that I will fight the strongest man in the world. Whitebeard took the lead and walked out with a smile, pointing the Kong Yunchi in his hand directly at Alan. Although I'm not used to fighting together with others, since I'm facing you, I have to make an exception. Stop talking nonsense and let's fight. Alan's fighting spirit was also completely aroused by the previous battles, and he waved in the direction of the 3 Whitebeards. Even though there are so many people besieging him, a strong man at this level will more or less fluctuate to a certain range every time he takes a shot. For example, now Whitebeard and the others' triangular positioning with Alan in the middle is the most suitable way to play. No matter how many people there are, their attacks will also be affected, and 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 will be less than 4. Seeing the black and red conqueror's entanglement appear on the Whitebeard's clouds, Alan suddenly smiled. If a few decades later, during the war at the top, Whitebeard had resorted to bullying, wouldn't Akainu and Teach be beaten to death instead of half to death? It can be seen that at that time, years of old injuries, the damage caused by the shock fruit to his body, coupled with the impact of aging on his physique, had weakened Whitebeard to what extent. Come on, Alan, follow my move again. Not only was Conqueror's hockey entangled with Whitebeard's cloud cutter, the energy of the shaking fruit was once again compressed on the blade, and it slashed towards Alan. On the rear left side, Shiki also used armament haki, with Kumu and Sakuraju instantly turning black. At this time, he was already in the legendary realm of great swordsmen. Lion Thousand Slice Valley. Several extremely powerful slashes were struck from his two swords, the sharpness of which even cut the rocks and plants along the way into several pieces. Singing Light Sword. The same move as before, but this time instead of firing the laser directly, Charlotte Linlin directly took Napoleon wrapped in flames and thunder in her hand and slashed towards Alan from the other direction. The flames and thunder on the sword, coupled with Charlotte Linlin's own huge strength, caused far more damage than the previous move. That's not bad. I can let the future legendary pirates and the four emperors deal with me, so my trip to this pirate world is not in vain. Alan smiled self-deprecatingly, wrapped his arms around Conqueror's haki, and rushed towards Whitebeard. In any case, the title of the strongest man in the world, in later generations is not for nothing. It is much more valuable than Kaido's title of the strongest man in the world. At least with Whitebeard's current age in his 40s, if he meets Luffy in another 10 years, he may not wait until he cheats on the Nika fruit, and he will kill him immediately. Just when Alan was about to punch, he suddenly felt his body lighten, and the balance of the entire body's force was also broken. This punch was not even 1/10 of the usual strength. On one side of him, Shiki's forehead also suddenly broke out in sweat. With his current strength, being able to use Piao Piao fruit to influence a strong person like Alan in an instant is already the limit. But just this moment is enough. Whitebeard clearly felt that the fist of Alan who was wrestling with him was not strong enough, so he used all his strength in an instant to suppress it crazily. Just when he was slightly suppressing Alan, the attacks from Shiki and Charlotte Linlin behind him also arrived. Several slashes and the Napoleon in Charlotte Linlin's hand slashed directly to Alan's back. Hiss. A battle between strong men will change drastically in just a moment, not to mention the half-second when Alan is relieved of his power. Even with Alan's physique, he felt a surge in his guts after being attacked like this, and there was even a hint of fishy sweetness in his throat. Get out of here, lousy. In a rage, Alan used all his strength and knocked back Whitebeard and his knife with just one punch. The next second, he appeared in front of Charlotte Linlin. Steel balloon. Although she was targeted by Alan, Charlotte Linlin was not panic at all. When she was only 5 years old, she was able to inadvertently injure a giant with a slap. In terms of physical strength alone, she was even much stronger than Whitebeard, Garp and other strong men. It's a pity that this time she met Alan who was stronger and even angry. Before Napoleon could make a move, Alan grabbed the blade with one hand, and Alan's iron fist followed. Charlotte Linlin just stretched out her hand to block, but was blocked by his elbow, and then she was punched in the chest. It's said to be a steel balloon, but the touch is not much different from that of a normal human being. Anger is anger, but during this kind of battle, Alan can actually be distracted and think about strange things. But this thought only passed by for a moment, and then Alan's fists hit Charlotte Linlin like a rain, crazily. Even if she was really made of steel, she would still be chiseled into a discus. Under such an attack, Charlotte Linlin subconsciously let go of Napoleon, who was being held by Alan, and his whole body was blasted into the mountain wall by him. A large amount of blood continued to overflow from the red lips, and I was afraid that I might not be able to get up for a while. Before Alan could do anything, Shiki had already flown into the sky as fast as he could. Even that woman, Charlotte Linlin, was beaten like this. If it were him, he would definitely be dead from broken muscles and fractures. At this time, the faces of other powerful men who were still watching became ugly. Although Shiki and Charlotte Linlin's attacks all fell on Alan's back, his whole mood even changed. But the fact is that their two attacks still didn't break through Alan's defense, and even the skin was just a little broken. If his defense is this high, the next battle will be difficult. Not long after the match started, Jabba on Roger's side and Charlotte Linlin on Rock's side ended up seriously injured. If they don't work hard next, I'm afraid they are the ones who will be killed here. Alan looked at these people coldly, with no expression on his face and no movement. In fact, his current condition was far from as good as they had seen. At least the attack from those two people just now without complete defense had already caused considerable internal injuries to his body. As for why the skin and flesh were not torn apart by such a slash. He is an esper with turtle fruit, phantom beast species, and basalt form. Where is Xuanwu's strongest defense? If his skin and muscles can be cut open from the back, then such a powerful attack can basically cut him in half from the front. Alan has never encountered such an attack so far. Laozi's men are already injured like this, it's up to you Marine to take action next. Alan was still silently recovering from his internal injuries, while Rox stared at Garp and Sengoku and suddenly spoke. Rox can develop his pirate group to this extent, he is certainly not stupid. Judging from the intelligence collected before, Alan is not the kind of person who kills people at all. That's why he asked his 3 cadres to take action together. Although it is definitely not Alan's opponent, it can at least cause him some trouble and minor injuries and arouse his anger. If Marine's men can't beat Alan, both sides will be exhausted, and he will take action directly to reap the benefits. Even if Alan can't finish the business, he can directly take over and take action against those stupid pigs sitting in the sky. If Garp and the others take down Alan, he can do the same, and even try to recruit Alan and use him for his own purposes. The whole plan has all the benefits and no harm, so why not do it? Okay, let's do it next. Warring States actually also wanted to understand Rox's intention, but before he could speak, Garp had already stood up with a sullen face. Even if he is a wise general, if he meets a companion like Garp, he can only stand up with him. There were only the 2 top experts on Marine's side, and Roger over there stood up without any hesitation. Ha ha ha, Garp, I never thought I would be able to fight alongside you one day. Captain, you go to Jabba's side. I don't trust him. You are not suitable here for the next battle. Rayleigh's expression changed a little, and she came forward, but before she could speak, Roger stretched out his hand to stop him. At this time, Roger's eyes were fixed on Alan, and he didn't even look back, but his tone was full of determination. Rayleigh could only sigh and headed outside the Valley of Gods. If we compare physical fitness, Rayleigh is not even as good as Shiki. If a person with a small body, like him were punched by Alan, he would have to go see the real Pluton. Alan, even if his strength is slightly lacking, Garp is not the kind of person who would make a sneak attack. The upright fists wrapped around the armed color rushed towards Alan, Sengguo followed suit, and Roger took action together from the other direction. Well done. Alan also shouted loudly and faced him head-on. To everyone's surprise, Alan failed to directly catch Garp's attack this time. Instead, his body suddenly stiffened for a moment, and he was directly hit on the head by Garp's iron fist, and received another Sengoku shock wave. Once he was thrown away by the force of the attack. God avoids. This time Roger did not hold back at all, and directly used his sword skills with all his strength. The air was torn instantly, and the black and red sword light disappeared in an instant, and the next second it had appeared on Alan's chest. Laugh. A blood-red mark appeared on Alan's chest, and drops of blood seeped out. Alan ignored his wounds and turned his attention to the golden lion Shiki, who was hiding behind rocks at this time. It's this guy again. At the moment when Alan was about to meet Garp, he used the power of the Piao Piao fruit to stop Alan for a moment. Shiki, Laozi remembers you. Alan stretched out his hand and pointed in the direction of Shiki, and then his entire upper body instantly turned black. It is very simple to be immune to the fluttering fruit. You only need to cover half of your body with the weapon color. However, this also has disadvantages, that is, it will consume a lot of Alan's physical strength, so he has never done this before. But it is simply unrealistic to deal with Shiki in a short time now. He can only deal with Marine first and then go against rocks. At this time, the enemy is divided into 2 camps, which is the best news for him. Suddenly, Roger and Garp, who were standing opposite Alan, had a look of surprise on their faces. I saw that Alan's body began to continuously exude a black aura. These auras seemed to be alive, constantly entangled around his body, and finally turned into a robe and put it on Alan's body. There are faint patterns of tortoise shells on the robe, and there is even a shimmer of light, and you can even faintly hear the sound of the waves swaying in the wind. Alan's facial features also underwent slight changes. His originally normal eyes turned into snake-like vertical pupils, and the aura constantly exuding from his body also transformed into an even colder murderous aura. Oops, this guy is so powerful that he actually forgot that he is also a fruit-powered user. Sengoku's face was already extremely ugly. Even before Oren transformed into a human animal form, he was already able to suppress them and fight. Now he was also using his fruit power. How could they resist? Looking at the three Garps, Alan had a strange expression on his face, and then he jumped up, took a deep breath, and the robe on his body became extremely bright. Frost Flower Extreme Cold Feast. Countless seawater spurted out from Alan's mouth, turning into huge waves and rushing straight towards the direction of the three of them. Without enough time to react, Roger and Garp took action at the same time, smashing the waves on the opposite side with swords and punches. However, water is an invisible thing after all. The moment the front was shattered, the seawater from behind continued to pour in. Just a few seconds later, the right half of the Valley of Gods was completely submerged by seawater. In the constantly pounding seawater, Garp struggled to find Sengoku, who was already a little weak. He was about to jump out of the water with Moonwalk, but he didn't notice the sneer in the eyes of Alan, who had stopped spitting water in the distance. This move is called the Extreme Cold Feast. It has just released the sea now, only half of it. The next second, the right half of the Valley of the Gods, which was already filled with seawater, instantly became extremely cold, and all the seawater turned into a block of ice, freezing the three of them firmly inside. Shiki, it's your turn now. After settling Marine's side, Alan turned his attention to Shiki. Shiki, who was still standing behind his captain, had a look of ferocity on his face, and a hint of murderous intent in his eyes. They are all men fighting on the sea. Either you die or I die. Even if the opponent is strong, he has nothing to fear. However, Alan's strength still made him feel faintly frightened. From the very beginning of the battle, Oren has already shown top-notch armament, knowledge, and Conqueror's domineering power, and is now the holder of the animal-type phantasmal beast fruit. Judging from Alan's performance, he has no doubt that the other party has mastered the awakening of the animal devil fruit. Facing such an opponent, Shiki is just ambitious but not crazy. How could he think that he is Alan's opponent? It's really hard to imagine that there are such powerful people in the world. Charlotte Dafu stared blankly at the scene in the Valley of Gods in the distance, muttering to herself. Before, they always thought that their mother was one of the strongest people on the sea, and the only one who could suppress her steadily was Captain Rox. Unexpectedly, today I really opened my eyes and gained a lot of knowledge. It's because he is so strong that we are fighting today. Captain John and Akoku, who were standing next to him, looked at each other sadly, and it was a rare occasion for them to pay attention to these brats from Charlotte Linlin's family. At this time, facing Alan, who had changed his form, Rox also had a crazy look in his eyes. Even though he is pretentious, he has to marvel at how talented Alan is. You know, when he was this age, whether it was Rox, Roger or Garp, he was just an ordinary pirate or marine. Throughout the history of the world, it seems that there has never been such an amazing and talented person. Alan, let Lousy be your opponent next. Countless black smoke overflowed from Rox's body, forming a sharp contrast with the solid ice on the right. Newgate, attack with me. Shiki, prepare your support. Lousy is a pirate, how can he play a one-on-one house game with you? Whispering sound. Alan curled his lips. At this time, his state, coupled with the entanglement of his armed color and Conqueror's domineering spirit, consumes a huge amount of energy every second. He doesn't want to be in vain with Rox and the others. If he really wants to stay here today, then he must choose to take Rox, Shiki, and Charlotte Linlin with him. After all, compared to other people, only these three people's ambitions and ideas can really harm countless civilians. Since he is about to die, he should do something for the common people of this world before he dies. Although the world government may have directly hidden his information, just like the blank history and Rox, information was hidden in later generations. But that's not important. My life is gone, why do I care about being famous or not? The secret path. Rox directly pressed his palm wrapped with the energy of the dark fruit to the ground, and darkness began to spread crazily on the ground towards the surroundings. Without any resistance from Whitebeard, he and Shiki were already standing on a rock fragment that had been shattered by the shock wave, and flew into the air. Not having air supremacy may be the most helpless thing for Alan now, but with his development of Xuanwu fruit, he will not be able to suppress the fruit's ability as soon as he comes into contact with the dark acupoints. Let's fight. Alan took the lead and rushed towards Rocks. Host, please practice hard and defeat the 17-year-old Monkey D. Luffy as soon as possible. Roll. Rocks' face became even more gloomy. You've already been surrounded and killed, and if you still dare to say such arrogant words, let Lousy kill him. Faced with the constraints of the dark fruit, and the injuries in his body that were healing but not yet recovered, Alan's punch this time was far less powerful than before. It only scattered the shock fruit on Whitebeard's fist. It's too late to catch up. Gia ha 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 ha. Alan, today is the day you die. Lion Way Earth coiling. Shiki watched this scene in midair, laughed arrogantly, and slashed crazily with the two supreme sharp knives in his hands, constantly attacking Alan from above. At the same time, the rock walls on both sides of the Valley of Gods continued to peel off under the influence of the Piao Piao fruit, forming several lion heads, which crushed towards Alan. Isn't it just an elemental shape? Lousy has not only seen One Piece before. Shuanghua. Bingchengquan. Following Alan's movements, countless amounts of ice spewed out from the ground like spring water. After shattering the lion head controlled by Shiki, it continued to stab the two people in midair. Kaido in later generations can use the blue dragon fruit to produce fire attributes. As a Xuanwu fruit that controls water and earth attributes, how could Alan not develop this aspect? What's more, 90% of this world is ocean. Isn't that the natural home ground of Xuanwu? Alan. Just as Alan was creating ice to deal with Whitebeard and Shiki, a hand stretched out from the ground in front of him and grabbed his ankle. The originally powerful frost thrust also stagnated for a moment. Drink. Whitebeard condensed the shock fruit into his fist, and the violent shock force instantly shattered most of the ice. Shiki directly controlled his body to fly higher into the sky, avoiding these ice spikes. Rocks smiled ferociously and slowly rose from the black mist of the dark fruit on the ground. With the fruit ability, there seemed to be a suction in his hand, constantly absorbing Alan's physical strength and fruit ability. Take action, what are you waiting for? As Rocks roared angrily, the white-bearded Kong Yuncho and Shiki's slash appeared above Alan's head at the same time. At this time, he could only raise his right arm that originally wanted to attack Rocks and blocked it. 2 attacks. If they were targeting the body, Alan might decide to trade his injuries for his life and kill Rocks directly. But the defense of his head is far from as strong as that of his body. If he barely resists, he may even die right here. The next second, like a nuclear explosion, there was a loud explosion where several people came into contact. The raging aftermath of the attack directly flipped up the mountain wall of the Valley of Gods and swept further away. The faces of the pirates and marines who were watching around them all changed, and they all ducked behind. Just this blow made the entire Valley of Gods widen by at least dozens of meters. Even the ice that was frozen by Alan with all his strength had many cracks. Gusts of strong wind blew away all the dust that had just been stirred up. At this time, Rocks had already taken Whitebeard and Shiki to hide a little further away. The corners of Alan's mouth turned red, and there was a deep wound on his right arm, with blood flowing out gurglingly. Although his body seemed to be born to cultivate the holy body, he had trained his physique and three-color domineering to this extent at the age of only 20, and had also developed the Xuanwu fruit of the phantom beast species to the point of awakening, but at this time he faced they are already some of the strongest people in the world. Even if Kaido, who brags about committing suicide every day in future generations, encounters this lineup, he will definitely be defeated in less than a minute. Under the influence of the Xuanwu fruit, the wounds on Alan's arms quickly condensed into scabs, and there was a hint of madness in his eyes. How could someone who can train himself to this level have no desire to fight? The most primitive fighting desire in this body, which was still suppressed by the Red Soul, was completely stimulated by the pain at the moment he was injured. This is interesting, ha ha ha. Come on. Alan's face, which had been calm since he was besieged, showed an expression of excitement. He clenched his fists tightly, and the black and red conqueror's domineering force wrapped around them. Boom. There was a muffled sound, and there was no one left where Alan was standing, leaving only a huge pothole. Careful. Rocks raised the dark fruit's ability to its highest level in a deep voice. His arms-covered hands, coupled with the dark fruit's wrapping, looked like 2 huge black boxing gloves. Even if the 3 of them are prepared, how can Alan, who has already tried his best, be so easy to resist? With a harsh sound that broke through the sky, the first thing Alan found was the golden lion. This guy has been using Piao Piao fruit to interfere with Alan's movements from above, and the reason why the three opponents can join forces is inseparable from the reason why he vacated himself and Whitebeard. It is time to deal with him now. Shiki. Whitebeard was the first to discover Alan's target. He jumped up without thinking, and Kong Yunchi slashed straight down, trying to force Alan to switch from offense to defense. But at this time, Alan had already changed his mentality. It would be better to cut off one of his fingers than to hurt him. Before the Shiki in front of him could form a defense, his fists were already covered with ice, and then changed into the shape of a finger tiger in an instant. Covered in armament, the tip of the tiger finger flashed with a sharp light. In Shiki's horrified eyes, Alan's finger accurately hit the joint connecting his left arm and shoulder, and blood suddenly spurted out. At the same time, the white-bearded Kong Yunchi also slashed at Alan's back after he deliberately adjusted his posture. With a loud bang, Kong Yunchi didn't even cut through the seemingly thin robe that Alan was wearing. Rox also jumped up from below in time. He clearly saw the extremely cold look in Alan's eyes when he looked at Shiki just now. With Whitebeard's slash, Alan's left hand had already grabbed Shiki's left arm, which was trying to escape, and his right fist hit the same position on Shiki's body again. The next second, the shock fruit, Shiki's right hand slash, and Rock's fist hit Alan at the same time. Even as powerful as him, he was instantly blown away and crashed into the rock wall of the Valley of Gods. Flying in with him, there was also Shiki's left arm caught in his left hand. Looking at Shiki again, after blasting Alan away, his entire face became extremely pale, and even the stones under his feet and Whitebeard's, who were still floating in the sky, became crumbling. In his current state, it is even difficult to maintain the ability to flutter the fruit. But at this time, Shiki's eyes were staring at Alan, who was lying on the mountain wall in the distance, full of deep-seated hatred. He has been working hard to surpass his own captain. But now he is missing an arm. How can he, who has always boasted of standing above the clouds, accept it easily? Alan, Lousy wants to kill you, Lousy must kill you. Looking at Shiki's crazy look, Rox suddenly felt something and grinned. Newgate, take Shiki and Linlin to the ship's doctor. You won't be needed in the next battle. Whitebeard was stunned, but he still reached out to pick up Shiki and Charlotte Linlin, and walked towards his pirate ship. It's not that he is so obedient, but that joining forces with these strong men to besiege one person was not the battle he wanted. Now that he is no longer needed, that is the best. Naturally, Alan won't stop him. It's also a good thing for him that the other party loses someone with such a strong fighting ability. Before Whitebeard here could completely leave, explosion sounds continued to be heard from inside the ice on the other side of the Valley of Gods. Within a few seconds, cracks appeared on the outermost layer of ice. Rumble. Finally, three figures broke out from the solid ice with ice shards. Their faces were not very good looking, and even Warring States' face was a little blue due to the extreme cold. Warring States. Lousy's men are almost dead or injured. Next, Lousy will take Garp and Roger to meet this guy. You all get out of the way. This is not an innocent move by Rox. As the strongest person on this side, he is bound to play. But his darkness fruit is really too powerful to restrain those with fruit abilities, especially those with abilities that have not yet awakened their fruit abilities, such as Warring States. With his dark fruit ability, Sengoku might not even be able to produce 50% of his combat power, and he would simply become a laggard. Garp and Roger have no such concerns at all. One relies on physical strength and the other relies on swordsmanship. Although the dark fruit has an impact on them, it is only minimal. But it's definitely not that simple for Alan. As one goes and the other goes, their chances of winning Alan have become greater. Alan, don't be silent over there. The attack just now will definitely not make you lie there for that long. Rox shouted coldly and angrily at Zhou Ming, who was still lying on the rock wall, but the latter did not react. He was indeed seriously injured just now, so he is lying down recovering from his injuries. Regardless of his own physical condition, if he just goes to fight with his head down, he is either reckless or stupid. It's a pity that Alan is neither of them, so he lies here secretly recovering his strength and injuries. God avoids. After being locked in an ice block for such a long time, even a big-hearted person like Roger couldn't help feeling a little resentful. Looking at Alan, who was still lying there, he flew over with a slash. The moment the slash hit him, Alan hit directly on one side of his body. The flying slashes moved forward on the rock wall until they split the extremely wide rock wall into two, and then gradually dissipated on the distant horizon. Good guy, you are planning to kill me. Alan looked at the expressionless Roger with a hint of teasing on his face. Just like the inheritance of Straw Hat, Roger, Shanks and Luffy are similar, more like adventurers than pirates. Most of the battles are about defeat, and people will not be killed easily. In previous battles, most of Roger's slashes came from positions such as arms and chest that would not directly hurt lives. But the evasive strike just now was directed towards Alan's head. If he hadn't dodged, he might have died right here. At this time, Roger's eyes were full of sharpness. Although he was frozen and could only break through the ice with his momentum, his eyes could still see. Seeing Alan's treatment of the Golden Lion, one knew that this guy was ruthless in his heart. If they were defeated today, then he and the Roger pirates would definitely face the wrath of Eren, who survived. For the sake of his partner, he is not prepared to hold back any more. Sengoku quietly returned to where the marine soldiers stood in the distance, just in time to prevent the pirates on both sides from having any bad thoughts after the battle inside. Alan, Rocks, Roger and Garp once again formed a triangle formation to face Alan, with a hint of coldness and determination in their eyes. It's interesting. Roger and Garp obviously took care of Rocks, but now it's the three of them who are here to deal with me. Alan stood up from the ground, patted the non-existent dust on his body, and his expression became solemn. The cold wind howled past. The previous non-stop battles made the entire Valley of the Gods seem a bit shabby, as if it had been bombed by Buster Call. Whether it's the ground or the rock walls on both sides, there are holes and pits everywhere. Come on, keep fighting. Dark water. In the center of Rocks' outstretched palm, a constantly rotating black vortex formed instantly. Alan could feel that the vortex had locked him firmly. Even if he directly covered his upper body with armed colors, he could only barely resist the suction of the dark vortex, and could not break free directly. God's avoidance. Fist bone meteor star. With two whooshes, Roger and Garp appeared on both sides of Alan's body, and struck hard with their punches and swords with unparalleled power. Hey, is it just a sword move? Alan, who was flanked, was not nervous at all, and even mocked Roger from the side. It's okay, as long as it works. The latter also showed a smile, but the ace in his hand showed no intention of slowing down at all. Just when the two men's attacks were about to fall on Alan, he suddenly showed a strange smile. In the astonished eyes of Garp and Roger, Alan suddenly let go of the force that was firmly holding him in place, and even kicked off his body, shooting towards Rocks like an arrow from a string. Alan's movement was so sudden that neither Garp nor Roger had time to react. Fortunately, the two of them had a tacit understanding. The moment they came into contact, one to the left and the other to the right, they staggered and missed their moves. Ha ha ha, Alan, are you from the net? Rocks, who was still using dark water to restrain Alan, rushed in front of him in the blink of an eye. The palm with the dark fruit directly grabbed Alan's body, and the ability to contain all devil fruit took effect instantly. The robe that was still on Alan disappeared in an instant, and the finger tigers on his fists melted and dripped into liquid water. Holding Alan's fist with his right hand, Rocks showed a grin on his face, and continued to grab Alan's face with his left hand. Naturally, he was interested in the fruit on Alan. As long as Roger and the others killed Alan, he would extract the fruit as soon as possible. When the time comes, you can find a crew member that you absolutely trust and eat it, and at least you can cultivate a cadre who is not weaker than Shiki and the others. You underestimate people like us. Like Rocks, Alan had a smile on his face. The most outrageous part of watching War on the Top was when Whitebeard beat up Teach. Although he didn't say it at the time, it was obvious that when he controlled Teach's hands, the hand holding Teach's head could still use the shock fruit ability. Therefore, the ability of the dark fruit to suppress other devil fruits is based on the premise that it must touch people with its hands. If that's the case, if Whitebeard can do something, how could he, Alan, not be able to do it? Let go of Lousy. But he just couldn't use the fruit ability. Alan turned slightly to avoid Rocks, other hand grabbing his shoulder, and then Conqueror's hockey wrapped around his right hand and moved toward the arm that Rocks was grabbing. It blasted around the corner. Ha! Rolling black smoke emitted from Rock's body again, blocking the path of Alan's fist. Although the dark fruit can absorb energy attacks and most of the force, it cannot absorb Alan's Conqueror's Haki. It only blocked it for 1 second before it was blasted through by him, and the iron fist hit Rock's arm directly. But Rox has been wandering on the sea for so many years, and he is also a ruthless person. He gritted his teeth and withstood the blow, and even his body only trembled slightly. The darkness fruit has the side effect of returning the damage suffered by the Esper with double the pain. Rox actually survived like this. Alan, you can't run away. At the same time, Garp and Roger also rushed up from behind, seeing that Alan had entered a certain death situation. Rox's eyes were full of excitement. The only step away from getting this devil fruit was Aren's death. Under the influence of his dark fruit, it is impossible for Alan to withstand the combined attack of Garp and Roger. This is the time. Alan seemed not to notice Garp and Roger behind him, staring at Rox with murderous intent in his eyes. At this time, his body had suffered these attacks, and the internal injuries were already extremely serious. Even if he broke free from Rox restrictions, he would not be able to defeat Garp, Roger, and Sengoku behind him. Instead of doing this, Alan's hand touched his lower back, and his whole body trembled. His instinct was a little weak, but he still took advantage of Rox excited laughter and swung it to the left. A sleeve with a buckle was thrown directly on Rox's arm. In just a blink of an eye, all the dark mist of the dark fruit disappeared, and Rox's face turned pale. Hi, Heilushi. This was originally the seastone sleeve that Alan used to train himself, but now it has become his secret weapon. Before Rox could react, Alan, who was still in front of him, had already made a knife with his fingers and pierced his chest directly. Cough, cough, cough. Rox spat out a few mouthfuls of blood, and his eyes were full of disbelief, as if he was asking, why did he die here when he clearly wanted to be the best in the world? But no one could answer his question. The moment Alan penetrated Rox's chest with his right hand, he crushed his heart. Stab it. Roger's ace had already slashed at Alan's back. At this time, all his strength was used in attacking Rox, and he had no time to mobilize any defense. Roger opened a big hole in his back instantly, and while blood spurted out, Garp's iron fist also hit his side, knocking Alan's whole body away. The two of them glanced blankly at the fallen body of Rox, and each other was a little dumbfounded. No one would believe that Rox, which dominates the entire sea, would die here. Before they could think too much, Alan, who was knocked away, let out a roar, and the robe formed by the fruit's ability appeared on his body again. This time, the momentum was much stronger than before, but there was a hint of joy on Garp's face. Having experienced hundreds of battles, they could naturally see that Alan was at the end of his rope at this time. As long as they persist, it will only be a matter of time before they capture Alan. No matter what fate Alan ends up with today, his record of single-handedly challenging the 9 strongest men in the world and beating them to death, maiming and severely injuring them should be unique in the entire history of the Haiyuan calendar. Coupled with the fact that he is only 20 years old, this is truly something unprecedented and unprecedented. If his deeds can be spread, I am afraid that in a few hundred years there will be people talking about this peak battle. But unfortunately, everyone present knew that this battle would only spread within their small circle, and the world government would not let such news spread. Alan, you are a respectable opponent, let me and Garp give you a final ride today. Roger said seriously. With the strength shown by Alan today, even if something unexpected happens to the two of them, Sengoku and Newgate will follow immediately. No one can bear the consequences that may happen if Alan escapes. He is only 20 years old now. If he practices for another 10 years, they can't even imagine what level Alan can reach. Alan, with red eyes, curled his lips disdainfully. I used to get excited about the quotes of Luffy and the others, but after I actually traveled through time, I realized that these pirates are simply a cancer among the common people. He even somewhat understands the thoughts of Akainu and his hawkish marines. What's wrong with wiping out all these shit-stirring sticks on the sea? Of course, I just understand their idea of killing pirates, but I definitely don't understand a little bit about being a dog to the celestial dragons. It's not clear who will give whom a ride. Why talk nonsense? Just get on. 2-finger tigers formed by black ice appeared in Alan's hands again, flying towards the two of them. Garp and Roger did not hesitate at all, and came directly to meet them. The final round of the peak battle has officially begun. The two of them were still on the left and right, and their moves didn't even change much. Seeing a Marine and a pirate in front of him, each punching and one sword coordinating with each other, even Alan, who was fighting them, couldn't help but feel strange in his heart. The offensive and defensive coordination between Garp and Roger is even better than that between Garp and Sengoku. Is this the legendary gay friend who entrusted his wife and son to him? I just don't know how Roger would react if he knew his son's name was Grandpa Garp. Will you resign yourself for the rest of your life and be willing to be a good man? Drink. Garp wrapped around the iron fist of the top weapon color, Roger wrapped around Conqueror's ace, and Alan faced Todoroki again with Conqueror's wrapped fist. With them as the center, the ground of the Valley of the Gods with a radius of several hundred meters seemed to be like crispy potato chips, cracking into countless pieces in an instant. Even ordinary Marine soldiers and pirates who had evaded 1 kilometer away could clearly see the ground. It was as if I was witnessing an earthquake in real time. At this time, no matter which camp they were from, they all fell silent in the face of such a shocking momentum. In a battle of this level, even if they are unable to participate in it now, and even if the place where they are hiding is too far away to see the scene inside, their hearts are still filled with excitement. In their lives, they can watch and listen from a distance. They are definitely unforgettable memories. Garp, even though he doesn't have Conqueror's domineering power, he has mastered his armament to the point where he's not inferior to Conqueror's. You're the one. Even Alan has to admire Garp's ability. In fact, his armored color domineering has also been cultivated to the top level, but if it is really purely a comparison of armed colors, Alan is indeed inferior to Garp. Of course Garp is awesome, otherwise he would have been chasing me for so many years. As soon as Alan sighed, Roger was already laughing and waving the ace in his hand and slashing up from behind. The flying chops collided with Alan's fist, making a harsh sound. Ace, whose body was wrapped with red and black domineering energy, immediately collided with Alan's fist again, creating a momentum that was not inferior to the fist fight between Alan and Garp just now. The two men attacked from the left and the right, giving Alan no chance to breathe. Come on, if you want to fight, let's fight together. Although Alan is panting now, he is getting more and more excited as he fights. His eyes have even turned red, and the robe formed by the devil fruit has gradually become damaged under the attack of Garp and Roger. But this did not have the slightest impact on his movements, and even the current battle was still in Alan's calculations. Finally, after taking Roger's sword, Alan was hit by Garp's iron fist again, and his whole body flew backwards. But this time he didn't stomp the ground and bounce back again before falling to the ground. Instead, he followed the force of Garp's iron fist hitting him, twisted around and ran away. As the saying goes, if you keep the green hills, you won't have to worry about running out of firewood. Big Buddha shock wave. Drink. Alan had just ran a few dozen meters away when two loud shouts suddenly came from in front of him. A golden Buddha dozens of meters tall suddenly appeared, and its huge Buddha palm struck directly at him. On the other side of the golden Buddha, the atmosphere cracked into countless pieces like glass. Waves of shock waves spread from the air to his body, causing Alan to spit out a mouthful of blood involuntarily. Garp and Roger also followed from behind, and the four of them once again surrounded Alan in the middle. I didn't expect that you two would also cooperate. Alan wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, raised his head and glanced coldly at Warring States and Whitebeard, who curled his lips in disdain. It was Sengoku who suggested it just now that there would definitely be a blind spot between Garp and Roger when fighting Alan. In order to prevent Alan from escaping, they intentionally or unintentionally intercepted him here. As expected, Sengoku had guessed it. He is indeed the most naughty general in Marine. Let's go together. Looking at Alan, whose clothes were torn and his face was pale, and even standing a little unsteady, Warring States spoke hesitantly, but his eyes were very firm. None of them spoke, but the entire battlefield felt inexplicably depressed. Use all your strength, giant Buddha shock wave. The Warring States period gave a sharp shout and took the lead in transforming into a giant Buddha, whose palms covered the sky and the sun. Garp didn't hesitate. Almost all of his armament was poured into this punch, and the punch was earth-shattering. Whitebeard's cloud cut fell from top to bottom, and the space around the blade was shattered into pieces as he chopped, forming a galaxy of space fragments. Roger has also poured all his conqueror's domineering energy into it, and the ace in his hand has turned pure black, with red lightning flashing on it. This combined attack by the four of them was even dozens of times stronger than the fluctuations in the previous battle. The entire Valley of the Gods was like an earth dragon turning over. All the rocks were shattered under this huge pressure. People who were still watching from a distance were running away frantically. The devastating attack headed toward Alan. "Alan, farewell." The four of them panted and looked at Alan, who looked like he was struggling to his death, and wildly waved his fists upward, but those efforts failed to produce any effect, and his eyes were extremely complicated. If Rox and others hadn't used their lives and serious injuries to consume Alan before, they might not have been able to complete this siege. Yes, the siege has been completed by default at this time. No one present will doubt whether this blow can completely kill Alan. At the moment when all the attacks came, when all four people were blocked from sight, a crazy smile appeared on the corner of Alan's mouth. Fruit Awakening Turtle Breath Technique. Transparent armor plates like tortoise shells instantly wrapped around Alan's body, and all his aura dissipated, and his body was directly integrated into the ground under the armor plates. Boom! The combined attacks of the four people hit the ground at the same time, creating an unprecedented huge explosion. The four people who were already far away were simultaneously thrown hundreds of meters away by the aftermath of the explosion. Their bodies were also covered with large and small scars. After their respective lieutenants and crew members caught their captain, they could take their respective positions and wait to observe the center of the explosion. When the dust settled, everyone had their eyes wide open and their mouths wide open. Valley of the Gods. There is no more Valley of the Gods. The original location of the valley has now become a huge deep pit, and groundwater is constantly seeping upward from the bottom of the pit. Several of them were possessors of top-level knowledge and domineering. After careful inspection, they found no trace of Alan, not even the breath of life. General. In the distance, a Marine headquarters lieutenant general ran towards this side excitedly. Oren's life card that we seized from the remnants of the Xuanwu pirates was completely burned. As soon as these words came out, everyone present breathed a sigh of relief. At present, there is no one in the pirate world who can hide the life card. Now that the life card has been burned, it proves that Alan is really dead. It's finally over. Everyone, that's it for today. Let's go our separate ways. We won't hold back next time we meet. Warring States looked at the status of himself and Garp, then glanced at Whitebeard and Roger across from him, hesitated for a moment, and then made a decision. Good. Chapter 11. East China Sea, Sibarati Restaurant. Contest. What a miserable weakling. Hawkeye glanced slightly sideways at the green-haired three-sword swordsman who was still holding his sword and looking at him excitedly. The next second, he had appeared on the deck of a broken ship floating on the sea. If you were a top-notch swordsman, you would be able to clearly see the difference in strength between you and me even if there was no confrontation. Do you dare to point your sword at me? Is it because you have courage or is it just ignorance? It's because of my ambition and the promise I made to my best friend. The green algae head opposite put the sword hilt in his hand into his mouth and bit it, holding one in each hand. He was actually a rare three-sword swordsman. However, none of them, who were still talking, noticed that the ship-breaking attack struck by Hawkeye just now went all the way into the ground and shattered a huge rock. A human-shaped object slowly floated inside, but it was covered with mud and dust. In the process of rising from the water, the mud and dust on it continued to slide down under the impact of the water, revealing the transparent tortoise shell-like shell. At this time, cracks were constantly appearing on these shells, and they looked like they were about to break apart. Hawkeye on the shore continued to show his prowess, tearing off a cross necklace from his neck, and then pulled out the lower end. Inside was a mini sword that was only a little longer than his thumb. I'm different from the stupid beast who has to use all his strength to hunt rabbits. Although you are a famous swordsman, this is the East China Sea, the weakest among the 4 sea areas. Unfortunately, I don't have a knife smaller than this. Quote. Anyone can see the helplessness on Hawkeye's face, which is the greatest mockery of the swordsman in front of him. Hey, there must be a limit when you look down on people. Don't regret it until you die. Because he was biting his sword, the green algae-headed swordsman's voice sounded like he was gritting his teeth. Before he could even finish his words, he was already heading towards Hawkeye at an extremely fast speed. Looking at his actions, Hawkeye only found it funny and curled his lips in disdain. Let alone a great swordsman like him, the guy in front of him didn't even reach the level of a swordsman, so he really couldn't arouse any interest. Oh, frog in the well, come and see how big the world is. Ghost Slayer. The green algae-headed swordsman slashed out his swords with both hands in a cross shape, and the long sword in his mouth also slashed horizontally with his slightly tilted head. But before he could complete the action, the Hawkeye on the opposite side had already pointed out the small sword in his hand, and it was right in the middle of the intersection of the three swords of green algae. Tisk, 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 that's interesting. How long have I been resting? Is this the famous scene between Hawkeye and Zoro? The transparent tortoise shell protection on his body was peeling off piece by piece. Alan rubbed his head. Maybe he had been asleep for too long, and he was still a little confused now. But when he looked up, he saw the scene of Hawkeye and Zoro confronting each other, which made him excited for no reason. The videos I watched on the computer in my previous life and the reality appearing in front of me must be two different feelings. And although the injuries in his body were directly injured due to the turtle breathing technique, which directly suppressed the healing speed, causing him to be seriously injured now, this also proves that he successfully escaped from the Valley of God's siege. Who is that and when did he appear there? Even though Alan had a lot of injuries on his body, and his appearance was not much different from the embarrassed pirate crew members around him, his unique strong temperament still made him stand out from the crowd. However, with the two people still confronting in the field, Zoro had no intention of paying attention to whether there were any more people watching the battle. At this time, he was looking at the small sword in front of him in a daze. It's only the size of a thumb, but it prevents him from making any progress. What's going on? Why can't I move? You used that toy-like thing to block the Ghost Slayer. Why is there such a disparity in strength? In Zoro's limited combat experience, he has never encountered such a situation. Impossible. The world can't be so far away. Zoro seemed to be going crazy, waving three swords at Hawkeye desperately, but the latter didn't move at all. He just turned around and blocked all his attacks with the small sword. With Hawkeye's slight exertion, Zoro was knocked over by him and fell directly to the side. Zoro, whose eyes were cracked, didn't even care about his sword skills. He just wanted to get up and continue fighting with Hawkeye. He was furious, but such an attack was completely disordered. Hawkeye seemed to be dancing a waltz under the light of his sword, and Zoro couldn't even touch him. Lousy didn't swing his sword just to be teased by that toy. Before Zoro could continue to fight, Hawkeye seemed to have had enough, and dodged his attack, then casually slashed the back of his neck, knocking Zoro to the ground. When he got up again, he was panting due to lack of physical strength, and even walked a little shaky, but he still wanted to attack Hawkeye until he collapsed to the ground from exhaustion. Hawkeye glanced at Zoro expressionlessly. He had seen many swordsmen of this level, but his willpower was pretty good. Swordsman, what are you carrying? What do you long for at the end of your strength? Weak. Tiger. Hunting. With Hawkeye's slightly contemptuous expression, Zoro stood up slowly, put the two swords behind his back, and then thrust forward with all his strength. Laugh. Before he could attack Hawkeye, the opponent had already inserted the small sword into his chest, and drops of blood fell on the deck. Do you want to be stabbed through the heart? Why don't you retreat? Hawkeye looked at Zoro, who was injured by his attack and couldn't move, and there was a slight change in his eyes. I don't know. I just feel that even if I take a step back here, all the important vows and agreements made so far will disappear, and I will never be able to come back here again. Yes, this is called defeat. Listening to Zoro's words, Hawkeye's expression finally changed. Then I can't even retreat. A smile appeared on the somewhat weak Zoro's face. Aren't you afraid of death? Better dead. At this time, the young man in front of him finally gave Hawkeye a little shock. What a strong heart this is, one would rather die than lose. Pulling out the small sword in his hand from Zoro's chest, Hawkeye put it back into the cross. Boy, tell me your name. Roronoa Zoro. As Hawkeye and Zoro's questions and answers, the atmosphere changed subtly again. At this moment, a casual voice came from their side. Good guy, the novice village hasn't even been released yet, so I went straight to defeat the world boss. It's not unreasonable to lose so miserably. But it's a bit boring for the strong men from the New World to come to the East China Sea to bully people. Unknown strong man, what is your purpose here? Hawkeye looked at Alan slightly. He and Zoro are not in the same realm at all. All of Zoro's energy is focused on Hawkeye, and Hawkeye noticed Alan as soon as he appeared, and even most of his energy was involved in him. Even though Alan's body is covered with wounds, large and small, and most of them look like they have just scabbed over, the instinct of a strong man will never go wrong. Me, what's my purpose? You can tell by the injuries on my body that I was beaten and escaped here. You guys beat yourselves, don't worry about me. Alan smiled awkwardly. He didn't shut up just now and almost interrupted the famous scene. It really shouldn't have happened. Hawkeye nodded seriously, then took out the black knife he had been carrying behind his back, and looked at Zoro again. I will remember you, the long-lost strong man. In order to show the etiquette of a swordsman, I will use this world's strongest black sword to bury you in the sea. Watching the confrontation between Hawkeye and Zoro, Alan felt as if he was sitting in the front row of the theater watching a stage play, which was quite interesting. Then I can't thank you enough. Zoro paid no attention to Alan's side, all his energy was focused on Hawkeye. This was the first time since the two met and fighted that Hawkeye took the initiative to attack. It was just a simple slash, but Zoro was ready. The secret of 3 sword styles, 3,000 worlds. The 2 knives rotated rapidly in his hands like windmills. They could not only confuse the opponent's eyes and use the unexpected slash, but also perform defense. Unfortunately, such a move had no effect in front of Hawkeye. The 2 swords in Zoro's hands were cut off by Hawkeye, and bursts of blood burst out from his chest. I never thought I would lose. Zoro gently sheathed the long sword in his mouth, but with a relaxed smile on his face, he turned around and faced Hawkeye, opening his arms directly. What? Hawkeye was stunned. The scars on the back are a swordsman's disgrace. Amazing. This sentence made Hawkeye smile with appreciation, but without any hesitation, the black knife in his hand slashed directly towards Zoro's chest. Blood spurted out, and such a serious injury made Zoro unable to hold his weapon any longer, and he fell backwards. Tisk, 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 the scars on the back are the shame of a swordsman, he's so handsome. And this Soda is really good at naming names. Look at Luffy's machine guns, rocket launchers, and the like. When Soda came out, he was Demon Slayer Tiger hunting 3,000 worlds. What's to come next is 6 Paths of Suji, 103 Emotions Flying Dragon. Shiji, what kind of naming genius is this? Alan looked at the development of the plot over there with some envy, and suddenly curled his lips. There are still a lot of scars on Laozi's back. Shiki and Charlotte Linlin seem to have been cut. Now one of them should be hiding in the sky over the East China Sea, and the other should be the 4 emperors, right? When Laozi recovers from his injuries, he will go take care of you one by one. At this time, Luffy was still a funny guy. He wanted to hit Hawkeye but couldn't, and even stuck his head into the deck. The latter ignored him and moved his gaze to Zoro, who was rescued on the boat in the distance. It's too early for you to die. Hawkeye's volume suddenly increased, and he knew very well that Zoro lying over there could hear his words. I am Jorakal Mihawk. See yourself clearly, understand the world, and become stronger. No matter how many years pass, I will wait for you in the strongest position in the world. Beyond this sword, surpass me, Roronoa Zoro. At this point, Hawkeye's mood became excited, and everyone on the side looked at each other a little bit. Only Boss Zapu, who has truly traveled the Grand Line, knows the value of Hawkeye, the world's best swordsman, and Shichibukai, and also knows what it means to be recognized by him. Laugh. At this moment of passion and sophistication, a sneer once again caught everyone's attention. Alan covered his mouth in embarrassment, signaling that it was not him, but the effect was definitely minimal. Strong stranger, what do you want? Although I can feel Alan's aura, there are no weapons around him. He seems to be a strong man who mainly practices physical skills. Hawkeye still had no desire to fight against this kind of person, so he just asked casually. No, I'm just curious. Isn't Newgate the strongest in the world? When did you become you? Also, how did you use the bamboo raft to pass through the windless zone? Did you use that black knife to row the boat? Your little sword is hidden inside the cross. Every time you fight a swordsman like Zoro, you just pull it out. Then when the necklace is no longer around, do you have to secretly tie the rope back on it yourself? The three questions asked everyone around were stunned, and some people even looked at Hawkeye with curious eyes. Although Hawkeye's expression did not change at all, it could be seen from the slight tightening of his hand holding Heidaoye that his heart was definitely not as calm as on the surface. Tell me your name. Under the black sword, no one will be killed without being killed. There was a trace of murderous intent in the faint voice. He didn't want to fight at first, but the other party really wanted to die, so Hawkeye didn't mind giving him a ride. There was a hint of amusement on Alan's face. It must have been more than 30 years now, and his name has probably been erased by the world government. I guess you all don't know my name. I'm Alan, Subversive, Alan. Disruptor, Alan. Hawkeye frowned. Pirates who could have their own names were basically those who had reached a certain amount of money on the Marine Bounty Order, but he was sure that he had never seen this person. And, this name is so familiar, I must have heard it somewhere. Alan the Subversive, Alan the Subversive. You are the Subversive, Alan. Impossible, you are not. There was a trace of surprise on Hawkeye's face, and his whole body tensed up. If it were other people, they might not know Alan's deeds, but Hawkeye is a good red-haired friend. When Red Hair was on Roger's ship, he was only 4 or 5 years old and had no memory of the Battle of the Valley of the Gods. However, he couldn't help but the people on the pirate ship would discuss that shocking pinnacle battle from time to time. Coincidentally, the red-haired man had seen all these powerful men that Alan fought before, so he knew how powerful Alan was. Hawkeye, who was familiar with him, had naturally heard of Alan's name and deeds. Danglang. Zapu, who was still watching the excitement on the deck, dropped the cup in his hand directly to the ground, but he didn't even bother to pick it up. Instead, he jumped off the side of the Bharati restaurant and headed in the direction of Hawkeye and the others. Run a few steps quickly. As expected. After getting closer to more than 10 meters, Zapu stopped, swallowed a mouthful of saliva, and murmured to himself. He is in his 60s and was at the age when he was working hard at sea more than 30 years ago. Naturally, he has also heard the name of the Subversive, Alan, who is famous all over the world. That was a ruthless person who publicly executed the celestial dragons. Later, it was said that he was killed by Marine, and there was no news about him for decades. Unexpectedly, he appeared today. Looking at that young face, it slowly matched up with the photo on Alan's reward list from more than 30 years ago. It's him, it's really him. Back then, Alan was the benchmark and idol for countless pirates. Too many people went to sea because of him, but they didn't know that Alan's true intention was to destroy all pirates. Boss Zapu, do you know this young man? Who is he? Only then did a group of restaurant employees catch up, looking at Zapu curiously, and then at Alan, who was standing opposite Hawkeye in the distance. Young man, he is not a young man. A wry smile appeared on Zapu's face. If he is really that person, then more than 30 years ago, he was a man standing at the top of the world, with a bounty of 5.5 billion belly. How much more? 5.5 billion, isn't that the same amount as One Piece? Roger. Compared with him, Roger at that time could only be inferior. As a veteran pirate, although Zapu does not have super strength or outstanding achievements, he is still very familiar with the events and celebrities in the pirate world. Impossible. One Piece is the strongest. Luffy, who had just pulled out his head over there, heard the conversation between Zapu and the others. He stared and pouted and turned to retort, but no one responded to him. Everyone's attention was on the confrontation with Hawkeye, of Alan. Are you really the Subversive, Alan? Hawkeye's tone was full of solemnity, and Black Blade Yi also stood in front of him. A person's name or a tree's shadow can have such a great reputation, so that red-haired people admire it so much that they can't help but treat it with eagle eyes without taking it seriously. I was born more than 30 years ago, who would pretend to be me? It's just that I was too seriously injured at the time, and I only woke up from a deep sleep. Alan shrugged helplessly, and directly told his physical condition without any scruples. It's not that he is bragging. Although he is still in a state of serious injury, if he wants to leave, a mere eagle eye really can't stop him. In this case, I have heard about your deeds a long time ago, and I would like to ask you for some advice someday. Although there must be something wrong with Alan's current physical condition, Hawkeye hesitated for a few seconds and still issued an invitation to challenge another day. Facing a strong man of this level, how could he not feel happy? But as the world's greatest swordsman, he can't do anything to take advantage of others, so he can only find time to fight with Alan again. If he were just an ordinary strongman, he wouldn't have to care about the opponent's injuries. After all, he couldn't beat him with or without injuries. I didn't expect that the legendary world's greatest swordsman, Hawkeye, would still know me. I'm really honored. A bright smile appeared on Alan's face, and then he stood up from where he was. No need to change the date, just wait for me to have a bite to eat. I'll also see who is stronger between you and Roger. Before Hawkeye could reply, Alan had already walked up to Zapu and patted him on the shoulder. Uncle, can you cook me a hearty meal? I haven't eaten for more than 30 years. Well, Zapu's face suddenly turned red with excitement, and he happily ran towards Barati's kitchen. He even forgot that he was only less than 10 years older than Alan. Hawkeye also followed him excitedly. Yes, One Piece Roger didn't eat any devil fruit, he was a simple swordsman. It is also Hawkeye's regret that he has never been able to fight against such a powerful swordsman. But now I have a chance. The Alan in front of me has fought against the near-peak One Piece. Even if he is fighting against him now with an injury, he can at least compare the gap between the two. Hey, you said that One Piece can only be inferior to you. Just as Alan put his arm on Jep's shoulders and walked into the Barati restaurant, a quiet voice came from behind. If this is really the case, then I will definitely defeat you. Luffy looked at Alan expressionlessly, his eyes full of determination. Hey, you, what nonsense are you talking about? Zapu was startled by Luffy's words and hurriedly glanced at Alan, who was still beside him. He quite likes Luffy, a junior, and really doesn't want him to die like this at the hands of Eren. He has never experienced that era, so he doesn't know what the name Subversive means. This is the title given to him by Marine after he single-handedly subverted 3 countries. Sir Alan, this guy is just a kid, you don't have to care about what he says. Seeing Zapu's nervous look, Alan smiled, then turned to look at Luffy, who had a stubborn face. Boy, you are not qualified to fight me now. Next time you have a chance, you can ask your grandfather Garp if he can beat me away. Garp, this guy's grandfather is the Marine hero, Lieutenant General Garp. Zapu and the others felt that their nerves were constantly being aroused today. How could there be so many big names coming to Barati? Hello. Before Luffy could finish speaking, Alan had turned back and stared at him, Conqueror's domineering aura coming out of him. After cultivating Conquerors to his level, he can naturally control it freely and overwhelm Luffy alone. Boom. Luffy only felt that his body seemed to be suppressed by something, and his whole body was trembling, as if he had encountered a natural enemy on the level of life, and his consciousness was somewhat blurred. But for some reason, there was a voice in his mind that kept calling him, allowing him to grit his teeth and stay awake. Just when the power was about to burst out of his body, Alan suddenly withdrew his momentum. Between the contraction and release, Luffy even felt a sense of loss. Alan, who had already walked into Barati, raised the corners of his mouth. Just now, he felt that the Conqueror's haki in Luffy's body was about to awaken, so he deliberately withdrew his own haki. Although Eren doesn't have any bad feelings towards Luffy because of the portrayal in the original work, why should I help you awaken your haki when you contradicted me like that just now? Who hasn't had a little thought yet? We enjoyed a sumptuous meal with great pleasure. The craftsmanship of Sea Barati is indeed well deserved. Being able to cook for his idol back then, Zapu had already used all his skills to do the best. While eating, Alan felt the Xuanwu fruit inside his body repairing internal injuries. The injury was really serious this time. With his physical fitness and self-healing ability, he can easily recover from ordinary injuries. Now with the fruit ability, it took him so long to recover to 100%. The strength of 30. Although Hawkeye did not eat, he was quietly adjusting his condition on the chair on the other side of Barati. If the person in front of him is really the person Shanks has been telling him about all this time, with such a terrifying record, he must adjust his condition to the best before he can fight against the opponent. As for Alan's status, there is no need to adjust at all. Inside the protective shell created by the awakening of the Xuanwu fruit, even though he has been dead for more than 30 years, his physical and mental conditions are still the same as the moment when the protective shell was activated. Just like when a person is asleep, there is no concept of time between falling into a deep sleep and waking up. As soon as the eyes are closed and opened, more than 30 years have passed. Even at this time, Alan's body muscles are still in the activated state when fighting in the Valley of Gods. As long as he takes a little rest and recovery, he can immediately enter the battle. But before, he was still facing the black-haired Garp and Sengoku, but now in a blink of an eye, he was facing Luffy with a straw hat. For him who was familiar with the plot, he still felt a bit disconnected. After wiping his mouth with satisfaction, Alan stretched and walked towards the outside of the Bharati restaurant. At this time, in front of the restaurant deck, there was still the wreckage of the large pirate ship that Hawkeye had chopped open with his sword. After Alan squinted his eyes and took a look, he directly raised his foot and kicked the side of the wreckage. Even though it was damaged, half of the giant sailboat, which was tens of meters high, was kicked out by him in an instant as if it was inflated. Let's go fight and don't damage other people's restaurants. The huge sailing ship moved several hundred meters across the sea before it came to a stop. Alan didn't know when he was already standing on the deck. Mihawk did not hesitate and jumped up from the deck of the Bharati restaurant on the sea and got off. 1 second also appeared on the wreckage of the sailboat. Hey, you guys should stop, that's. A strong man with short purple hair and thick golden armor stared and raised his hand to say something, but before he could finish speaking, Alan turned around and waited. By the way, this is the Creek Pirates. If you are known for being mean and shameless, then there is no need to keep him. The top-level Conqueror's Haki was unleashed with full firepower. The entire Creek Pirates rolled their eyes and fainted, with traces of white foam still flowing out of their mouths. What are you? With the Eagle Eye's knowledge, it is natural to see that those ordinary people have basically been directly shocked to death or had their brains shattered by Alan's Conqueror's domineering force. Even if they wake up, they can only drool. It's just a small matter. After all, we have done our job of eradicating evil. If we let them go, they will have to do many outrageous things in the future, so I will send them away in advance. I hope they will not become pirates when they are reincarnated. He nodded thoughtfully, and these little characters were not ignored by Hawkeye. He clenched the black knife in his hand, and his eyes became sharper. Senior, I'm going to kill you. The black knife in Hawkeye's hand reflected jet black light under the blessing of his power, and his aura became sharper. Use Liu Ying to develop a supremely fast sword like this. You are really a top swordsman. This sword is not much better than Roger's ace. A black robe made of Xuanwu fruit appeared on Alan's body again, and the finger tiger on his hand also formed. Alan is not sure about the others, but in a few years, Hawkeye will directly sit on the throne of the 4 emperors with Crocodile and Buggy, and even put a bounty on Marine. Therefore, the world's greatest swordsman in front of you must not be underestimated. Now that the injury is not completely healed, the right choice is to directly activate the fruit's ability. Otherwise, if your boat capsizes in the gutter, you will lose your dignity. Before the two of them had any concrete contact, a green light glowed on Hidoye, followed by a huge slash. Compared with Josie's difficulty in resisting during the war, Alan just covered his fist with a domineering force, punched hard in the face of the slash, and smashed the slash directly, without any damage to himself. This attack is a bit interesting. Although it doesn't have Conqueror's domineering entanglement, the attack power is already very good. Thank you for your appreciation. Senior, please continue to accept the challenge. Hawkeye also became excited. Since Shanks lost an arm in the East China Sea, he has never fought against him again, and the people in New World who can fight against him are somewhat inconvenient. It's been a long time since I've been able to release my fighting desire so heartily. The next moment, Hawkeye had appeared in front of Alan. With a sword and a fist, the entire sea around him was shaken. The seawater seemed to be affected by the explosion, and was blasted into the sky by the aftermath, and then it seemed like it pours like heavy rain. At this time, Hawkeye was just like the Zoro he fought with just now. The black knife continued to attack from all angles, and his body shape was constantly changing. Even in the eyes of others, his movements were almost an afterimage. But Alan still maintained his own rhythm, and with his extremely fast movement, every punch could hit the blade that Hawkeye struck, making him unable to make any achievements. Even though the strength of the two people's fists and swords was extremely high, because they were just sparring, both sides still controlled the dispersion of power. This is the battle of those who stand at the top of the world. With the help of Sword Master Johnny and Sword God Joseph, Zoro slowly sat up and watched the battle between Hawkeye and Alan in the distance with some sluggishness. Zoro, you are going to become the world's greatest swordsman, right? Luffy's somewhat deep voice came from beside him. That's natural. Okay, you want to become the world's greatest swordsman, and I want to become One Piece and defeat that person over there. Along the way, Luffy has always been careless, and this is the first time he has expressed his attitude so seriously in front of Zoro. Turning his head to look at Luffy's face in the shadow under the straw hat, Zoro, who was still lying on the boat, nodded solemnly. Captain, I promise you. The sword masters on the side looked at each other and wanted to say something, but they still muttered and did not say anything. Bite. Alan once again blocked Hawkeye's attack with his fists, then tightened his muscles and pushed him back more than 10 meters. Mihawk, you are very powerful, but stop here. If you continue, you will risk your life. Now that your armed domination has reached a very high level, and with this black sword, you are well deserved as the world's greatest swordsman. However, although Roger's armed color Haki is not as powerful as yours, he has mastered Conqueror's entanglement technique. Even though your armed color entanglement is powerful enough, overall he is still slightly better than you. You are very determined in your swordsmanship, but what you have to do now is to understand your own path in life and find your ideals and heart of wanting to be a king. Conqueror's domineering spirit will naturally come out. When the time comes, I will fight more powerful people and understand the skills of Batang as soon as possible. I look forward to fighting you again at that time. With Hawkeye's current strength, even if Alan is injured, his reckless burst of strength can still defeat him. However, based on the level of his current armament and the increase in dominance, Alan is really looking forward to fighting against him at that time. Grateful. Although Alan was not a swordsman, Hawkeye still performed the courtesy of a swordsman, returned to his raft in an instant, waved a sword energy, and the raft drifted in the other direction with the reaction force. Even though he usually goes boating at night, at this time he still has to ensure his performance. Watching Hawkeye leave, Alan's eyes slowly moved aside. Oh, by the way, I almost forgot about this. Before he finished speaking, Alan had disappeared from the spot, and the next second he appeared on the boat where Zoro was lying. What are you going to do? Zoro, who was still lying down, immediately spotted Eren behind Luffy and struggled to get up with his eyes wide open. Ah, Zoro, you. Before Luffy noticed anyone behind him, he was hit on the back of the neck with a palm from Alan, rolled his eyes and fainted. Luffy. Zoro kept struggling, the wound on his chest kept oozing blood, and the clothes he was wearing were dyed red. Don't get excited, don't get excited. Seeing that this guy was almost hanging in front of him, Alan quickly reached out and pushed Zoro back. His grandpa and Roger made me sleep for more than 30 years for no apparent reason. It's only right that I ask him for some interest. Don't worry, he just wants to sleep for a while. Just now, the system in Alan's mind jumped out to remind him again. Please host complete the novice task as soon as possible. In terms of time, it has been more than 30 years, and this guy is still here, and he still insists on reminding him to do tasks. He can be regarded as a model worker in the system industry. But, judging from the current point of time, this system has really been made up for in the past few years. Congratulations to the host for completing the series of tasks, Road to the Strong One, and taking a step forward on the road to becoming the top player in the world of One Piece. Task Reward. 1 Marrow Washing Fruit. Reward Description. The fruit that grows on the top of the mountain contains strong vitality and purification power, and has the magical effect of cleansing the marrow, cutting the menstruation, and reborn. Pith Washing Fruit. Alan stretched out his hand and materialized the reward directly. It was just a red fruit about the size of a cherry, but he could also feel that it was full of vitality. After eating it casually, you can clearly feel the medicinal power of the marrow-washing fruit spreading rapidly in the body, but Alan's body has been impeccably trained by himself, and the medicinal power of this marrow-washing fruit cannot strengthen him in any way. After strengthening the meridians to no avail, the accumulated medicinal power was directly aimed at the hidden wounds in Alan's body, and began to expel the accumulated impurities and blood from his body in batches, and then repaired the damaged organs and tissues. This brought unexpected joy to Alan. Although it did not strengthen his body much, the healing effect was still good, at least it restored him to 10% of his strength. With his current strength of 40%, if he meets Garp, he may not be able to defeat the veteran who has been practicing for more than 30 years, but he may not lose to him. At least he will be able to run. The series of tasks is being released. Road to the Strong Part 2. The Straw Hat Boy already has his own one-piece right hand, the three-sword swordsman Roronoa Zoro. Use your strength to teach them a lesson again. Mission details. Please use swordsmanship to defeat the three-sword swordsman Roronoa Zoro. Warm reminder. The main task cannot be refused. Please host complete the task seriously. There will be corresponding rewards for each completed task. Defeat Zoro with Kendo. In fact, this is not difficult. After all, his eyesight and strength are here, not to mention the domineering look of the Straw Hat Pirates who are still in the novice village. The point is, Zoro is still lying on this small broken boat, with blood pouring from his chest. Not to mention defeated, I'm afraid Suo-da will die as soon as he takes action. Forget it, it's like the first mission. It took more than 30 years to complete, so it's not a big deal. Walk around first, then go back and wait for Suo-da to recover from his injuries, then come back and bully him again. Now that he has come to the East China Sea and is still in the plot of the Bharati restaurant on the sea, he must go to Kokoja village. Before I came here, the figure on my computer desk was Nami's wife. You're already here, why don't you go to your wife's house to see her and your sister-in-law? Wrong. What kind of sister-in-law? It should be another wife. Those are Nami and Nuo Chigao. They grew up together. They are more like sisters than sisters. How can you bear to separate sisters? Donghai, Kokoja village. Alan walked off a pirate ship with a smile. Although he doesn't know how to get to Kokoja village, the most indispensable thing in this sea is pirates. All he needs to do is find a pirate ship with a chart of the East China Sea. Walk slowly, walk slowly. After Alan kicked the captain of the pirate ship who was trying to kill him and turned him into a man-made Logia devil fruit user who turned into ice crystals all over the sky, the other crew members on the pirate ship treated him even better than they treated their own family members. Still want to kiss. Not only did he give him the most luxurious room on the entire pirate ship, but he even thoughtfully prepared 3 meals for fear that his diet would be poor. Of course, the most important ingredient is the dozens of meters tall manatee we met halfway. Even though he doesn't know how to use a sword, Oren can still kill it with Conqueror's Haki and then split it into several large pieces. For beasts like this that randomly attack passing humans, the best outcome would be to kill them and eat them. It may take the next life for Luffy to feel the good fortune of letting it go after giving it a casual beating. Although Kokoja village is a relatively famous place nearby, the mental state of the people here is obviously different from that of the people in Bharati. The faces of the people walking on the street seemed to have lost all hope, and they were like walking corpses, exuding an aura of despair everywhere. Maybe this is what the real One Piece world looks like. There are those pigs lording it over the top, there are the marine corpses in the middle, and below there are the scum pirates who burn, kill and loot, and take human life seriously. Sir, are you a foreigner? As soon as he walked into Kokoja village, a man with a windmill on his head came over, with a nervous look on his face. Oh, isn't this my old father-in-law? Facing Aegean, Alan still maintained a certain degree of politeness. Yes, I was sailing on the sea and needed to replenish some fruits. I heard that there are oranges for sale here, so I came here to buy some. Aegean hesitated for a long time, then pointed towards the hillside not far away. There is an orange orchard over there. If you need a lot, you can go there and buy it. But it's not peaceful here. It's better to leave quickly after buying the oranges. Okay, thanks for reminding me. Alan greeted Aegean politely and walked directly in the direction of Nami and Nokigao's house. Although it only took him a second to kill Eren, what he was after was not business. If he had killed Eren directly before seeing Nami and the 2 girls in person, how could he let them do it? What about maximizing feelings? This is not a favor, it is just a small way to gain affection. Alan walked slowly along the dirt road, and there was a faint fruity aroma from the orange groves on both sides, which really made him intoxicated for a moment. From the foot of the slope, you can see a girl with short lavender hair picking oranges from the tree. It has to be said that even from a distance, one can clearly see how slim her figure is, and her waist to bust to hip ratio is simply astonishing. As expected of a woman who grew up eating the same thing as my wife. This figure is all about wow. And the tattoo I got to protect my wife is so pretty. Only when facing these characters that had appeared in the cartoons he had watched, did Alan regain some of his past life psychology. Although more than 30 years ago, as a world-famous pirate, Alan had never encountered more stunning women, but those women were completely unable to make him feel throbbing, and they just purely satisfied each other's needs. The one who made him slightly attracted to her last time was the younger version of Shaki. Unfortunately, when he met her, he had already prepared a golden basin to wash his hands. He failed to seduce such a beautiful woman. There were other things to do at that time. Otherwise, Gaolu will give Lao Lei a hat 30 years in advance. What's the matter with you? Nokigao had just packed up a whole basket of oranges when she saw Alan coming up from the bottom of the hillside. He looked at her with hot eyes, and she couldn't help but blush slightly even though she was still stretching. Ah, I want to buy some oranges. Alan just plundered the pirate ship before leaving. The pirates here in the East China Sea are poor. There are only more than 1 million Baileys in such a big pirate ship. 400 Baileys each, thank you for your patronage. Hearing that Alan was here to buy something, Nuo Chigao showed a smile on her face, took the initiative to run to the basket of oranges she had just picked, took out a bag and stuffed it inside. This one is bigger, so I have to put it up. This one looks sweet, so I have to put it up too. While packing the oranges, she secretly looked at Alan's expression. The bag was almost full, so she casually brought an empty basket over. There was still no change on Alan's face, which made Nokigao feel even happier. It seems that we met a big customer today, maybe we can sell tens of thousands of belly. Suddenly, there was a slight ringing of bells from the village below. Nokigao's face instantly turned ugly, and he didn't care about the orange basket. He grabbed Alan's hand and ran towards the house. Please come in with me and hide for a while, something bad has happened. What's up? Alan felt the warmth coming from the little hands pulling him, and was even a little curious, how did these hands that often worked keep the skin so smooth and tender? Before he could say anything, Nuo Chigao had already pushed him into the bedroom and closed the door from the outside. Nuo Chigao, it's time to hand over this month's money. As soon as the door here closed, a blue-skinned fish man wearing sunglasses walked into the room. Oh, okay. Nuo Chigao took out 100,000 belly from the drawer of the living room table without any expression and handed it to the fishman. This has been prepared a long time ago. If you put extra money here, it will be snatched away by the fishman. 100,000 yuan is the most suitable. For Nami's sake, the fishman wouldn't embarrass Nuo Chigao, so he nodded and turned around and left. It is only responsible for collecting money. As long as the money is collected every month, Aaron will naturally reward it. What's going on? Alan poked his head out of the bedroom curiously. Although the scent of this orange bedroom is fragrant, the most important thing now is to conquer Nami and Nokigao. As for the bedroom, after the strategy is successful, you can change the room every day. No, it's okay. I'm going to pack oranges for you right now. After buying the oranges, you should leave as soon as possible. It's not safe here. There was a bit of disappointment on Nokigao's face. Every time the fishman came to collect money, she could think of that woman, Belmir, who gave up her life for her and Nami 8 years ago. Okay, then I'll pick more oranges. Alan didn't ask deeply. Based on his knowledge, he had already discovered that Nami had returned when he first landed on the island. Now he was just creating an opportunity to meet here. At this time in the fishman paradise, Nami walked out of his house expressionlessly carrying a black package. Hey, it's Nami, do you want to go home? Several fishmen were playing in the pond, and they saw Nami and said hello with a smile. Although the latter felt sick to death, a smile immediately appeared on his face and he waved enthusiastically in response to them. Aaron, who was sitting on the chair in the middle, glanced at the package on Nami's back, with a trace of ridicule on his face. How was Nami's harvest this time? Not bad. Aaron looked at the smile on Nami's face, and the corners of his mouth turned up. It must be good. After all, betraying humans is what you are best at. Nami's fake smile froze on his face for a moment, and the nails in his hands almost pierced into the palms of his hands before he forced out another smile through the pain. Aaron, you understand me. I'm going home first. Nami turned around and left the Fishman paradise after hearing the Murlocs' wild laughter. Endless hatred immediately appeared on her face, but she could only walk to Kokoja village alone. As long as she can see everyone in the village, the grievances and fatigue she suffered outside seem to be swept away. Everyone in Kokoja has been driving her motivation. Even when she returned to the village, everyone seemed to have not seen her and walked past her expressionlessly, but she was only slightly disappointed. When your plan is completed, everyone will be able to regain their freedom, and then they can tell the truth and let everyone return to their normal lives. Thinking of this, Nami's mood improved again. This time she still gained a lot from going to sea, maybe she could even collect 100 million belly. Walking briskly, the jewelry and Bailey on her back were carried on her shoulders as if they were weightless, and she walked up the hillside going home. From a distance, she could see Nokigao squatting there and picking oranges with a man. The two of them could exchange words with each other from time to time, and she could even see Nokigao's unconscious smile. Nijigao, I'm back. A teasing smile appeared on Nami's face, and she threw herself directly on Nokigao's back, looking up at Alan. Who is this? Why don't you introduce it to me? This is Mr. Alan who is here to buy oranges. Nami, please stop talking nonsense. There was a hint of shyness on Nuo Chigao's face, but it turned pale in an instant. How can the women in Kokosia village have the right to think about that? Under the rule of this group of Murlocs, bringing any outsider in would be harmful to others. Nami also thought of this, but the smile on her face did not change at all. Instead, she gently patted Nokigao's shoulder. Don't panic, there are more this time, maybe it's enough. While talking, Nami glanced at Alan warily and found that he was still picking oranges with his head down, so he quickly put on his big backpack and walked into the orange grove. Looking at Nami's back, Nuo Chigao sighed softly and continued to squat down to help Alan pick oranges. It was really relaxing to talk to the man in front of me, but unfortunately, they were not from the same world. Just as the two were picking oranges, Nami ran out of the orange grove panting, grabbing Nokigao's hand, her eyes filled with anxiety. Nijigao, do you have 400,000 Baileys there? You're just short of 400,000 Baileys. Nokigao was stunned by Nami's reaction, and instantly understood what she meant. But, today I gave all 100,000 belly to the fish man who came to collect the money. Now my family only has a little over 30,000. How about borrowing it from Mr. Aegean? For a girl like her who has been looking at the orange groves in Kokoja village, 400,000 belly is not so easy to come up with. No way. Nami quickly waved her hand and rejected Nokigao's proposal. She didn't want to affect anyone in the village before the matter was resolved. But seeing that the goal they had been aiming for was right in front of them, but they were just a little short of completing it. The two girls faced each other and pursed their lips, and Alan couldn't help scratching his head at the side. Is there a possibility that I can take out this 400,000 Baileys? Whoa, the two women were stunned, and their little heads turned to Alan at the same time. Instead, they looked a little embarrassed to him, a guy with evil intentions. What's wrong? Don't you need money? Mr. Alan, do you really have 400,000 Baileys? Thank you so much. Let me tell you, Noki has never been in love in her entire life. Nami's eyes turned into the shape of Bailey, and she came up and hugged Alan's arm. Her little head smiled evilly and kept gesturing towards Nokigao. Naturally, she wouldn't sell Nuo Chigao just because of 400,000 Baileys. In this situation, she just needs to get the money first. Moreover, Aaron will not come to the village again after paying the money. This can be regarded as saving his life in disguise, and 400,000 Baileys is not expensive. Nami, what did you say? A faint blush appeared on Nuo Chigao's wheat-colored face. She glanced at Alan with some embarrassment. When she found that the latter was also staring at her, she immediately looked away. Although I don't know what you are going to do, but seeing that you are so anxious, I will give you all these. Alan didn't hesitate and gave all the money he had to Nami. Anyway, I have to go to errands to deal with them in a while, and I can get back whatever I give. When Nami saw Bailey, she quickly took out the stack of Baileys with a face value of 10,000 yuan and ran towards the orange field with a hand speed that was not expected of an ordinary person like her. Mr. Allen, I'm really sorry, but we also have a reason to need money urgently. I will definitely return the money to you as soon as possible. Nuo Qigao smiled sheepishly. He was obviously here to buy oranges, but he actually borrowed money from him when they met for the first time. No hurry, no rush. Alan happily picked out an orange, peeled it and put it in his mouth. Perhaps because of the geographical location of Kokoja village, the oranges grown here are rich in juice and sweet in taste, which is really good. At this moment, a warship had arrived at the port of Kokoja village, and 2 rows of well-trained marine soldiers stepped down neatly from it. Where is Police Constable Jian of Kokoja village hiding? I am Colonel Mouse of the 16th Marine Branch. Ask him to come see me. Sir Colonel, I am Kenzo. Jian was stunned for a moment, then quickly stood up. Take me to the house of a woman named Nami. Ah, what do you want from Nami? Ken was stunned and didn't know how this Marine knew Nami, let alone why he asked for Nami by name. Just lead the way. There was a sinister smile on Colonel Mouse's face, and his eyes narrowed. Nijigao, is Nami at home? Just as Alan was helping Nokigao move the baskets of oranges into the house, Jian's voice came from not far away. Nokigao and the other 2 turned to look. Behind him was a whole team of Marines. Is this the correction ability of the plot? Obviously we got here a day earlier than in the original drama, but we still met these disgusting guys. Jian, are you looking for me? Nami had just hid all the money and came out of the orange grove when she heard Jian's words. But when he saw Marine behind him, he instinctively felt something was wrong. Chi, you are the thief named Nami. According to our investigation, you hid all the treasures you stole from the pirates. The treasures you stole are now confiscated by our government. The few beards on both sides of Colonel Mouse's cheeks trembled up and down with his evil smile, but Nami and the others didn't pay attention to these details at all, but stared at the Marine in front of them. Although he was submissive in the face of the pirate Aaron and his gang, in front of the villagers of Kokoja and Nami, Colonel Mouse showed his full strength. All the property you stole from pirates must be kept by the government. Nami glanced at Marine in front of him and sighed inwardly, but still turned sideways to reveal the tattoo on his shoulder. I'm a cadre of Aaron's group. If you do this, Aaron won't let you go. At this time, Nami had not noticed the sarcastic smile on Colonel Mouse's face. Aaron, chi. A weird laugh came from Colonel Mouse's mouth, and then he waved his hand behind him. Go and search out all the stolen goods. Several Marine soldiers walked out directly from behind him and were about to walk into the orange field, but before they took a few steps, they were attacked directly by Nami from behind with a long stick and fell to the ground. Is this what you Marines have to do? Aaron not only killed people here, but also destroyed the village. You all just turned a blind eye, right? Hey, stop saying those high-sounding words. Colonel Mouse didn't even pay attention to what Nami said. He was now only thinking about finding the treasure that Aaron told him that the thief in front of him had hidden. Continue the search. Colonel Mouse didn't even look at the 2 defeated Marine soldiers. Instead, he glanced at Nami with interest, and a group of Marine soldiers moved forward to suppress her. With so many people coming forward, Nami tightened her grip on the long stick in her hand, but did not dare to make any move. Hey, that kid's money is going to be used to save this village. Where do you have the right to take it away? Zhang clenched his fists, and his eyes were even bloodshot due to extreme anger. A girl's 8 years of hard work, and a village's 8 years of forbearance, are now going to be plucked by this shameless Marine. Nami looked at Kenzo in front of him blankly, a little at a loss. We already knew that you joined Aaron's group to save us. Now that the words were spoken, Zhang no longer concealed anything, and nodded seriously in her surprised eyes. Hey, so you are all thieves in this village. Do you want me to arrest you all? Colonel Mouse looked at the 2 people in front of him as if they were playing charades, stretched out his hand to stroke his beard, and laughed jokingly. They are saying that all of us are working hard to survive. Isn't it because your government is unreliable? If you can't solve the problem here, get out. If Aaron discovers it, you can't leave either. Nokigao, who was standing aside, couldn't bear it anymore. He stood up and gritted his teeth and roared at Colonel Mouse. Aaron. Facing Nokigao's question, Colonel Mouse showed a meaningful smile, and then looked at his men who were still rummaging around. Look for it quickly. I'm not asking you to find rice grains. That's 100 million belly. Why is it so slow? How do you know the amount? Kenzo and Nokigao both had angry expressions on their faces. How could they still not understand why Marine came here? Report to the colonel, we found it. As a voice of surprise came, the box that Nami had just hidden was turned out by the group of Marines. After opening it, it was full of Baileys and treasures, most of which had Madara's blood stains on them. The subordinates who could follow Colonel Mouse out were all money-minded subordinates, and now their eyes were naturally shining when they saw this box full of Baileys and treasures. Don't touch it. Nami's pupils dilated slightly. What these Marines found and wanted to move away was not only her hard work over the past 8 years, but also the hope of the entire village of Kokoja. How could she be taken away by these Marines like this? She no longer cared about being a Marine or a pirate. There was only one voice in her heart, that is, she must not let these people leave with the box of Bailey. Seeing Nami rushing toward Colonel Mouse with a long stick, Kenzo's first reaction was to quickly go up and hold her. Although he didn't want to admit it, it was obvious that this Marine was working with Aaron. Nokigao also rushed to meet Nami and wanted to grab her arm, but at this time, Colonel Mouse had already pulled out a gun and aimed directly at Nami. Now that 100 million Baileys have been obtained, the thief in front of him is of no use, and it doesn't matter if he is killed directly. After all, they are different from Aaron and his group. If they really sue to Rog Town, it will not be easy to explain. Bang! The pungent smell of gunpowder from the flintlock was directly triggered. Nokigao didn't even have time to think, so he threw himself in front of Nami, preparing to block the shot for her. Unexpectedly, the expected pain did not appear at all. A figure appeared between her and Colonel Mouse, with the bullet sandwiched between his 2 fingers. Such a lovely girl is meant to be pampered, and you're actually willing to hit her with bullets. Alan glared at Colonel Mouse and flicked the bullet back. The bullet penetrated his chest instantly, and a splash of blood burst out. Colonel Mouse is dead. Run. Sure enough, what kind of generals led what kind of soldiers? Colonel Mouse was killed by Alan 1 second, and the Marine soldiers he brought with him started to run away crazily the next second, with no intention of revenge for him. Mr. Allen, you are so powerful. Nokigao's eyes lit up and she wanted to say something, but Nami pulled her hand out and shook her head. She had seen too many powerful pirates when she was working as a thief outside, but none of them were any match for Aaron. You know, just one cadre in the Fishman Paradise has the ability to deal with a Marine warship alone, and being able to catch a bullet is nothing. I'll go find Aaron and find out. Nami suddenly shook off Nokigao and Kenzo's hands and ran towards the Fishman Paradise. Nami. Nochigao wanted to reach out to stop her, but opened her mouth and said nothing more. Miss Nijigao, it looks like you are in some trouble. Do you want my help? At this time, the shirtless Alan showed a sunny smile. Nokigao instinctively wanted to ask for help, but after much hesitation, he still shook his head. That Aaron killed Belmir and squeezed Nami out to make money while working as a surveyor. She couldn't wait to tear him into pieces. But the fishmen are too strong and powerful, and they have no way to resist. Even someone as powerful as Mr. Allen may not be their opponent. They can just bear this kind of predicament by themselves. Why do they need to involve the innocent Mr. Allen? Nuochi is so tall. Allen sighed softly, took a step forward and stroked Nuochigao's hair, and shook his head helplessly when the other person's cheeks turned red. You have just heard what those Marines said. How can you still believe that the fishman will keep his promise? If you bet your fate on the fact that the fishmen won't be mean and shameless, the chances of losing are too high. Besides, this would be too unfair to Ms. Nami. The initiative is in your hands. Do you want me to help you? Nokigao looked at Alan blankly, even forgetting that the other person's hand was still on top of his head, hesitating and not knowing what to say. Kenzo clenched his fist suddenly. This gentleman is right, Nuochigao. Now that the fishman has given us such an answer, we must not be silent any longer. Now I will go to the village to summon everyone. Seeing Kenzo leaving, Nokigao seemed to have made up his mind, holding Alan's big hand with his backhand, his eyes full of pleading. Mr. Allen, please help us. Of course. Alan reached out and rubbed Nokigao's hair, then chuckled and took her hand, walking towards the Fishman paradise. If we calculate it based on Marine's bounty, Aaron's bounty is 20 million Baileys, and it seems to be 5.5 billion. Hey, Nami, what's wrong, our genius surveyor, why is he so angry? A teasing smile appeared on Aaron's face. He prided himself on being superior to others and admired the angry expression on Nami's face. Did you send Marine to steal my money? Aren't you going to abide by the agreement about money even if you die? Why? Seeing Nami's attitude of asking questions, Aaron's eyes showed a trace of anger, and he suddenly showed a sneer. When did I break my promise? Now you have 100 million belly. As long as you have it, I will return the village to you. Of course I do. Aaron was stunned by Nami's answer. A mocking expression appeared on the former's face, and he felt a little more thankful in his heart. I'm sorry, the Marine you called didn't succeed. Bailey is still here with me. You should abide by the agreement. Oh, have you collected enough 100 million belly? Of course I can keep my word. It's just a village, so what if I give it back to you? Really, you can come with me to withdraw money now. Following Aaron's words, Nami's face showed a hint of joy. The 8 years of suffering were finally not in vain, and now there is a result. Of course it's true. Kruby, go and get the money back with our surveyor. From the moment you get the money, Kokoja village will be free. Aaron waved casually, and a stout fish man wearing a karate uniform stood up and followed Nami towards the outside. Just one village is exchanged for 100 million Baileys. This business is still a good deal. Boss Aaron. A fishman with protruding lips smiled and started talking, but was interrupted by Aaron waving his hand. Hey, I just said that the moment Kruby gets the money, Kokoja village will be free, but I didn't say that it won't be occupied a second time. Now you can go there too and help our dragon pirates once again. Capture a village. No problem, but you were really cruel. Ju folded his arms indifferently and walked towards the direction of Kokoja village. Hey, how could I let such an excellent surveyor like Nami escape? Let's wait until she has measured all the seas in the world for us. All the fishmen burst out laughing. In the eyes of this group of creatures, human suffering is their best remedy. Kroabi, let's go quickly. After coming out of the fishman paradise, Nami felt like returning home. She thought about going home quickly, handing over Bailey, and everyone would be free. When the time comes, she will tell the truth to the villagers in Kokoja, and she really can't wait to see their expressions of surprise and joy. It's a pity that Kruby has a dull temper when he's not fighting, and he walks slowly, not even as fast as Nami. How did you get here? There was a voice behind him, and he turned around to see that Ju had already caught up with them. Why are you here? Kruby had a guess in his mind, but he didn't say it out loud. He just asked lightly. Ju looked at Nami, thinking that she would know about it soon anyway, so it didn't matter whether he kept it a secret or not. Didn't Boss Aaron ask you to withdraw the money and then set Kokoja village free? I'll follow and occupy it again, and capture another village for the dragon pirates. Nami, who was still waiting for Kruby with a smile on his face, stiffened instantly and looked back at the two fishmen with a dull look. Oh, if you tell me directly, aren't you afraid that she won't give me the money? Kruby glanced at Nami curiously, but waved his hand indifferently. What are you afraid of? If you don't give me anything, go kill the humans in that village. Let's start with the guy with the windmill, the one called Jian. Listening to the conversation between the two murlocs in front of him, Nami's heart dropped from the excitement just now, and she even felt a little hopeless. Maybe I won't be able to collect these 100 million belly in my lifetime, but I still imagine that Aaron can keep his promise. It's really stupid. Nami smiled somewhat self-deprecatingly, and collapsed on the ground, not wanting to move anymore. Hey, did you hear that? If you don't withdraw the money, Ju will really kill the people in those villages. Standing next to Nami, Kruby looked at the somewhat collapsed Nami with a calm expression. He reached out and tried to grab her arm, but he suddenly missed it. Looking up, I don't know when a group of people appeared in front of me. The villagers of Kokoja were glaring at them with farm tools such as hoes and shovels. These weak humans are not taken seriously by it at all, and can be slaughtered easily. What Krub noticed was the young man standing at the front of the crowd. His hands were around Nami's slender waist and he was holding her in his arms. Nokigao was still comforting her softly. You still want to touch Nami with your fishmen's dirty and smelly hands. It's really disgusting. Alan's calm words directly caused the two fishmen on the opposite side to break their defenses and stare at the same time. How dare a mere lowly human being say such words? It walked slowly towards Alan with gnashing teeth, and the muscles on its body were constantly tightening. It wanted to teach this ignorant and lowly human a lesson. Bad human beings. Alan's face was full of mockery. A group of rubbish pirates that were broken up by Porosalino. The leader is a fish man who was once a slave. Where did you get such confidence? Or do you want to emphasize what is missing? What did you say? Kruby and Ju were both crew members of the Sun Pirates back then. Naturally, they had gone through the desperate experience more than 10 years ago. The entire Sun Pirates were unable to fight back in front of Porosalino. Especially now that he has become one of the 3 generals of the Marine Corps, he is an existence that even they dare not touch. But how did the human in front of me know? You lowly human being, no matter how you know this, if you insult Brother Tiger, you are the mortal enemy of our fishmen, so you should die. Ju shouted angrily, jumped up high, and punched Alan on the head. Be careful, the villagers of Kokoja who were still behind Alan exclaimed at the same time, and then there was a blur in front of their eyes, and the leaping fishman had disappeared. Snap! At the same time as this crisp sound, Kruby felt a strong wind suddenly appear beside him. The wind was so strong that it almost staggered. The young human in front of him still kept extending his hand, but Ju had completely disappeared. What did you do? What did you do to Ju? Kruby's face showed a trace of solemnity. He didn't even see what method the other party used. Want to know? Then let you feel it too. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.